back to the GM's report on page 76. So we'll start with the, I'm going to do these group issue by issue. So we're going to start with, hang on, I'm on the wrong page here. No wonder, it's not 76, 14, yeah. For some reason I start, yeah, I was. That's right, apologies. 14, I'm going to start with the resource consent issue, and then we'll come back to the staff recommendations at the end of the whole lot, but we'll go through subheading by subheading, if you get what I mean. So firstly, Fraser McNutt's going to come up and talk to us about that section. We'd asked for some information on how the process worked, and Fraser kindly was volunteered to do that. Floor is yours, Fraser, and we'll have questions at the end of his, just on this section at the end of his talk.
We're starting from paragraph 3,
correct, paragraph 4, sorry. That's probably my fault for not specifying that. Paragraph 4, Gary, through to 16.
All right.
Fraser.
Good afternoon, councillors, Chair. So just starting from bullet point 4 there, just going to give you a brief overview at a high level of the consent process. So 2 types of resource consents that we issue. The subdivision and land use consents, and that's through the Resource Management Act. And through Schedule 1 of the Resource Management Act, we have to produce a district plan, which is what we implement and administer, and that is where we base our decisions when we're issuing our decisions on land use and subdivision. Prior to lodging a consent, we will engage typically in 2 different ways with our customers / developers. We provide a duty planner service, which is the little box you see on the ground floor there, which we provide a free service to our customers and the public. 15-minute slots, people can come in and discuss anything to do with the district plan really, and we provide that service. When the development gets to a scale which is a bit more than sort of mum and dad and typically involves a consultant, we provide a pre-application service. It's all online, again free, huge uptake, really successful, and that is there to give developers certainty around, well, they're doing their due diligence normally. They want to understand the likelihood of success of a particular type of proposal, and wanting to engage with council and our colleagues. It's not just planners, development engineers, parks and open spaces, etc., environmental health. So we pull all these people together and we provide a 1-hour free service to them. We follow that up with written notes, which is on the public record. So for any of these pre-application meetings, we can provide that to the record to any of the elected members or anyone that wishes to see what was discussed, and the feedback. Then the applicant will follow up and normally lodge their application. That application can incorporate a number of additional reports, as I've touched on in bullet point 6. So that's there. Sometimes we peer review those reports, sometimes we don't. Following that, we get into the assessment, and we make 2 main decisions when we're processing consents. And the first decision that we make is a decision of notification, which is to notify the consent or not. If we notify, it's publicly notified or it's limited notified, or non-notified. They are the 3 options. Pardon? Public. So we can publicly notify something, which is anyone can submit. There's no limit. Or we can limited notify to specific parties adjoining and adjacent, or we non-notify. Sure. Following that, we either have a hearing if it was notified and there were submissions. If it was non-notified, which is the vast majority of our consents, the decision is made to approve or grant, and that is done under Section 104 of the Act, which takes into account policies and objectives. So they're the two main decisions that we make during the consent process. Didn't want to get into too much detail, but condition point 9 just highlights parts of the Act that we take into consideration through making that overall decision, such as the purpose of the Act and the Treaty Waitangi. The delegations, through the Chief Exec, are delegated down to the Unit Manager to make those two decisions. Section 95 and 104 that I've just touched on. Should an application require notification, and we head to hearing, like I just mentioned before, that is heard by commissioners, and that is attached, I think, as Appendix 1 and 2 to this report, highlights the through council decision to delegate that power to hearings commissioners. That can be a panel of both councillors and hearings commissioners, but if you are a councillor and are on that panel, you're an RMA accredited member, so it's not just for anyone. And I believe we have two, I think Paula, your ticket's expired. Okay, so just, yeah, that's just a bit of extra there. Right, yeah, so the appendixes are attached with the decision around we've got 10 independent hearings commissioners, and GM of City Growth has the authority to appoint any one or two of those commissioners at any time. We just had a hearing for Ryman Health, and that was 2 hearings commissioners that were appointed for that. Out of those 10 on that panel, we tried to roll through that list as best as possible, so we're not just using the same commission every time. Go to, talk about 13, 14. Oh, so attached is there was a right of renewal for those commissioners. Point 15, it's attached as Appendix 2. I think they are up for review, might be next year. It's not too far away. So we can go through that again.
It's always the month after the new council takes office.
Yeah, okay.
So it was December 2016, so December next year.
The last thing I put there is if we have a conflict of interest, Hamilton City Council is the applicant. We put the application to a consultant to process, an external consultant from our PSB panel, and they make a recommendation to myself. I can still sign that off. If it's contentious, I can push that decision making to a commissioner to make the decision on that as well.
So just before the questions start, Fraser, can you say where it is that councillors get to have a discussion about any planning issue that's coming up? Where in this? Because that was the question that was raised at the last meeting that caused us to come here.
So if a councillor has a question about...
No, I didn't. No. Where
sorry.
can council have a discussion about an issue that's coming up that's going to result in a planning application of some sort? You know, for instance, you know that they're planning applications such as they're coming forward for that pre-hearing consultation before something's been finally lodged, and there's been at least 4 cases in the last year where council said, hang on, we want to express our opinion before staff do their report on it. In one case to do with Harrowfield, it was before notification decision was made. They want to have a say on that sort of thing. So where does that happen? Because this is an entirely staff process you've outlined here, which is really helpful, but the councillors have expressed to me, a number of them, not all of them, wanting to know why it is even a council decision if the elected members never have any input at all.
I guess there is no RMA section that deals with that specifically. For a start, I'll try to answer the question. We sometimes have third parties voice concerns about a particular proposal during or before or after a consent application is lodged, and the way we deal with those is that they write us a letter and they put it in writing.
I'm not asking.
And
I'm talking about council.
Yep. And we take that into account when we're writing our report. If council had an issue, my recommendation would be that would be put through the GM of City Growth to keep the unit manager, who is the decision maker, impartial. We have to remain impartial because it's a regulatory exercise and there's always the threat of judicial review, and we have a process to follow. But that's not stopping us taking into account via the right channels additional views or information that could be relevant. So the door is open. I just think the channel that information comes through is really important, and my recommendation would be through the GM.
Your recommendation, but could you say where in the RMA it says planning staff should not or are not able to or should not be able to consult with council about decisions such as notification or staff reports to commissioner-run hearings? Where does it say in the RMA?
So it doesn't say that, no. It does. We do have delegations though for making decisions on applications.
And those delegations don't prohibit staff from consulting with council, do they? They prohibit council making some decisions, but they don't prohibit the consultation or discussion, for instance, around this table.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, so then I would go back to my question, where does that input happen? And if it's only to express an opinion through the general manager, I don't believe that's what council's been looking for in cases like Harrowfield, the Rotuna Town Centre for two that come immediately to mind. Been another couple where people wanted to be able to have say. Harrowfield, they wanted to have a say about who should be notified. I recall that quite clearly.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, I try to be consistent with how we deal with all of our customers and developers, and when we're making our decisions. And they, like I say, they come to us for certainty on the outcome of proposals, and we can give them that certainty through our experience and through working through the statutory framework. If we are to involve another part to that process, then I'm happy to look at that. I'd like to take legal advice on it personally, because I'd like to follow best practice. So not opposed to it. It's certainly different to how we've progressed to date, but I'd be interested in looking at how that could be done consistently, so that all developers in Hamilton City are getting a fair shot. We're not just picking
Well,
out.
all applications for resource consents, I believe, are notified through the Chief Executive's update to councillors, which we had a discussion at a previous meeting. That was the opportunity for councillors to know what was coming up in the lift. But then if they want to have a discussion about any of them or any aspect of any of them, that was the query. Where does that input take place? And so there needs to be a place for that to happen.
Sure. So sorry. For me, there's a difference between having a discussion and having input into a process. So we're always open to having discussions with any elected members on any application at any point, any time. For me, that is different to having input to decision making.
No, I think it's both, actually. And I can give you an example of what happened in about 2009 or 10, when the council received an application to develop the old corner of where the brick wall was, corner of Clyde Street and Grey Street, thanks. And the council staff put in an application by themselves, and councillors had, hang on a minute, this doesn't meet our transport policy requirements issue, and we actually ended up with two different councillors making submissions direct to the Environment Court in support of council policy against at least one aspect of the staff report, which wasn't in support in that area of council policy. In fact, that carrying right through to the Environment Court hearing. So I'm just putting the question, I don't think management have thought this through about how they make sure that the whole council makes the decision, not just staff, you know, in terms of the process. The process doesn't say that councillors are able to make a decision because of that RMA training requirement, but it equally doesn't say that councillors can't be involved in having input. For instance, if we have a policy in an area, we should be able to ensure that staff are promoting that policy through their staff report, for instance, or their decision on who should be notified, perhaps.
Yeah, I guess it's just understanding completely the level of input that we're talking about and how that would be done, and that was legally robust, would be my comments.
Sure.
I think you're touching on a really important principle, and that principle is something that most of us won't have been taught because we even now don't get taught civics anymore, then that's the separation of powers. And I think what Fraser's struggling with is that our input is the district plan. We set the law, then you separate the power and these guys administer the law. And I think well, I'm putting words in your mouth and I don't want to, but I think he's thinking, you guys have had your go, you've got your district plan, that's your bit, and then it's up to us. And it's important that there is a separation, that it's up to him to do it, him and his people, because we delegate that to them. So I think that might be where
I think you're
we're
right.
struggling.
Your summation's right, and perhaps in where Fraser's sitting, but it's not just the district plan that we do.
And Fraser might not be thinking that at all.
No, we also prepare policies in a number of different areas, which when there's council staff reports that are given to commissioner hearings, one would think they're supposed to reflect council policy.
But the district plan is the council policy.
Correct. And sometimes they're not necessarily completely in alignment either.
Then you'd have to change the district plan. If you thought something was wrong, you'd have to put more detail in your district plan or something like that to do it. I think to do the totally objective, non-biased law making you want.
The other thing is that happens is clearly is that when you look at when the delegations are set, they're set immediately after a new council is elected at the first formal meeting, and councillors are not experienced in what the issues coming up. For instance, people didn't know the Harrowfield problem, that type of problem, the fact that the neighbours weren't going to have a say in that area, and by then the delegations had already been set. Maybe they should be reviewed halfway through or something like that when committee membership's reviewed and that sort of thing. You know, this is a more governance sort of issue, but we've delegated staff to make some of these decisions. Delegation can change as well, because it's the council that issues the consent, not the staff. The staff are delegated to do it on behalf of the council.
I would add, whoever's making the decision, the RMA framework isn't changing, so the process of making notification decision is not changing.
But there is nothing, as you've agreed, in the RMA that prevents council having a discussion about an issue that comes before, an application that's going to come before us or has come to us, prior to have input into the staff report or to have input into a number of other decisions, including the notification one. There could be also including who's the commissioner hearing. We may have delegated authority to make the decision somewhere, but there's nothing to stop the input, and I think that's what's been lacking. And this is not a criticism of staff, because, as you say correctly, you've done what's been happening for at least 7 or 8 years.
Dave, can I just jump in and suggest that maybe this would be one of those things that you and I can have a conversation about? And I mean, Fraser has got a process that he's following, obviously, but I can understand that there's some further conversation that some of you want to have. Can we take this as an opportunity to have a bit of a look at where an appropriate place would be to have those conversations and come back to council on that?
We can. I just point out, Jen, that that was the same discussion that was had with your predecessor.
Sure.
And we've ended up with Fraser presenting his report and sort of being put in the firing line a bit, not actually advancing that question, that issue. So I think we need to make sure that I mean, it's not a matter of everyone needing to agree with, for instance, my view on Harrowfield. It's a matter of having a process that allows council, when it wishes to have a say, to be able to have that say.
Okay.
And to be given enough warning so that it knows when it might need to have that say as well. So,
I'll just add, within our current framework and how we're operating, I'd be happy to explore any avenue as to how we could improve what we're currently doing for giving councillors awareness and working with you, with council on any application and helping you understand what's involved, as well as the process that we follow, if that would help. So there's that option as well.
yeah, no, and I'd urge, in fact, I was talking to Siggy before about a particular case where I think, yeah, if councillors have planning issues, they should actually go to Fraser rather than to his level, rather than necessarily the individual planner that may have given approval.
Absolutely.
It might be more helpful to go direct to Fraser on those individual sort of situations to at least understand them.
Sure, David, understand your concern and your point, and would like to have a fresh look at it with some fresh eyes. But we can bring it back to a briefing and have a proper conversation about it.
Okay, that briefing would probably be quite good because it's been hard in the formal meeting. I've got questions from Gary still. No, Jeff. Sorry, and then Gary.
Yeah, look, I don't know if this is relevant to it, but for me, what I'd be after is some sort of safeguard so that the situation that happened with Te Awa Lakes, where it's politically, it was a pretty big deal and something that we were really, I was really interested in, and I think staff put in staff opposed it rather than perhaps putting in a neutral submission on it. And for me, it's just a way of getting some sort of forum where big issues like that, we can have at least not be surprised by it. And have some input into it. I think that's what I was hoping would come out of here. That's what I'd be looking for coming out of a briefing, if possible.
Thanks. You. Gary, thanks.
Thank you. On paragraph 4, and these might be very, very simple, I think I know what a subdivision and a land use is, but can you just explain
Sure.
what they are?
So land use is the use of land.
So that's called industrial, retail, residential. Is that what it means, those things?
A bit more specific, even further, like childcare, duplex, apartments, hospital, stadium. Subdivision is the division of land.
So one is about the use, the other is simply about all uses can be subdivided, all... okay, that's
No,
a curve.
a farm that can be subdivided up, blocks of land, certificates of title can be created through subdivision process. So that's how you're able to divide land and then sell off to individual owners.
So it wouldn't be unusual for there to be a subdivision and a land use change, and exactly the example you're talking about.
Correct.
Because it was a farm, and we're now going to chop it up, and we're going to convert it into residential. So that's what the two different things are. And they are two different processes, are they?
They are two different processes. We would issue two different decisions, two different consents, and
With what did you say?
we would issue two separate
Two
consents,
separate decisions, thank you.
two separate applications, and I was going to say they can be lodged concurrently. So a classic example in Hamilton City right now is I have 1,000 square metres. I would like to do some duplexes. I'm going to build those duplexes through a land use consent on an existing piece of land. I'm then going to subdivide to fee simple title those individual units and then sell them off to whoever. So they will lodge a consent, two consents at the same time, and we'll process those concurrently. And two decisions.
And they are two standalone decisions?
Correct.
So one could work, one could fail?
Well, one might build the duplexes, but never decide to go through with the subdivision for whatever reason.
Okay.
There's
But
no
We
obligation.
could turn down the subdivision, you mean?
We could turn down the
Yeah,
subdivision.
because it fails to meet our plan or something like that, yeah. Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks. One other issue that came up also actually out of the Harrowfield thing, but with several others, was when you get, sort of more seeking a commentary, when you get someone applies to do something, in the case there was put apartments or duplexes on some sections, and that the application was for a limited area, and then subsequent to that application, the owner of that bought some of the adjoining land all around it, and I don't know, presumably they're going to apply for more of the same around the outside, so the final animal is a heck of a lot different in size from the original application, but so they mightn't trip some thresholds to do with stormwater or transport, for instance, but the original application was for something that fell under the threshold, but if you had ever seen the entire project, it would have definitely tripped some thresholds and led to more requirements, for instance, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, it just depends on how an applicant would like to develop their land and package that up.
So they're fully entitled. There's nothing you can do to put higher requirements when the second part, phase B, comes along.
We consider a consented environment if we're consenting something on a piece of land. If there's an existing consent, and say they're using an existing access way, and then someone else develops next door to them and they use that existing access way, we don't just look at it fresh. We consider the consented environment and pressure on that access way. So there's different ways that you can develop it. It really is dependent on the developer, and I guess for me, I just consistently administer the district plan and work with our development community as they come in. And
What about the guidance to us so that we can sort of be ahead of the game and something like that? An example was the base. When TGH first came to us, they applied only to subdivide the area immediately where the warehouse is, or it's to develop, I should say, the area where the warehouse is with a certain number of car parks, 300 or something like that, and now they've got 3,000 or whatever it is, and there was only a single entrance way needed because of the size of the development was there, but in actual fact, their long-term plan, which they never applied for at the start, was for the entire area and involves a whole different stormwater catchment, wastewater dispersal, transport connections, things like that. So we never got a look at the precinct wide.
I think, and this is something that Councillor Gary just touched on, and something that I might be able to help this council with in the right setting, but it's the potential that someone can utilise the district plan in its current form. So as it is, there are certain things that one might be able to do on a piece of land, depending on the zoning, and that's what needs to be realised, I think, by neighbours, by council. The development community are certainly aware of that. They normally push that to the limit. But that's something that I think when writing district plans, one needs to be quite aware of. So that, the maximum that someone might be able to develop a piece of industrial land or commercial land or residential land, and as an example, whether that might be non-notified, because the plan does say some activities on some pieces of land in the city you can change quite dramatically from as it is right now. It'll be non-notified.
But if it was 10 times the size, you probably would have to notify it, for instance.
Yeah, that would be probably likely if the standards were exceeded as such.
Yeah.
But it'll still be driven, that notification.
Yeah, no.
Driven by what's written.
In the district plan, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I guess where I'm coming from there is that for many years, elected members have complained about that aspect, but we've thought we've controlled it in the different iterations of the district plan, but haven't clearly, because it can still happen. So you could, our planners could be advising us on how to fix that element of the district plan in future.
Absolutely, you can workshop variations or new plans, etc. So, yeah, to me, it's just fully understanding the process, understanding what's in a plan, normally the plan before, and working to improve that,
Thanks.
to get the outcome that council wants.
Thanks. Gary, did you have more?
One real quick one, and you talk about subdivision. Can you do a reverse subdivision, i.e. an amalgamation? That's no problem either?
You can amalgamate land use.
Presumably that would be less common, but
You can hold titles together.
yeah, and that's just another process which is
Correct,
the same
yeah,
thing. Okay,
yeah,
it just
correct.
goes through the same process. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a part of the act, yeah.
Thanks. If there's no other questions on that aspect, we've got into Blair's area. Thanks, Fraser.
Cool.
Which is the strategic regional collaboration from paragraph 17 through to 45. Oh, yep, that's right. Blair's also been here too. Sorry. Were you guys, I thought you were just enjoying the meeting up there. Okay. Yep. Blair doesn't mind wasting his time here as long as the waste people don't. Come on up. So what I was trying to avoid so Blair, you've given away your spot. You're going to go to the end now because we're going to do all the ones in the growth and infrastructure area first. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just. It's page 19. Sorry, I'm just looking for the number, Gary, which starts at 77 and just goes through to 85. Thanks, Trent and Kirsten.
Just in regards to the Waste Task Force update, I don't know if Mark wants to. Okay, so we just had the last meeting on the 26th of March to just cover off the waste minimisation, just events, the curbside rubbish recycling service and the waste management and minimisation plan. So in just regard to event wastes, we've just weekend just passed, had a presence at the Waikato show in terms of introducing recycling at the show. And we're still working through with the gourmet in the gardens. Obviously that's finished now, but we're looking to re-establish that next year. And we've just had a few interest around just having event waste kits for some of the smaller events where people want to actually have a recycling presence there. So we're just investigating that a little bit further. There's been ongoing emerging impact in regards to, this is in relation to the curbside rubbish and recycling service. With the China's Green Sword policy is having quite a significant impact overseas, and it has had minor impacts in New Zealand, but obviously with our current service there's no impact. However, the likes of, I think in Tauranga, that the service provider over there is no longer allowing glass to be put in with other recycling. It's been able to cease the glass collection. But no impact for us. And we'll be coming back from the consultation feedback for the waste management and minimisation plan. Will be presented at the 19th of April council meeting.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, was that questions? And we got Gary and then Angela.
Thanks very much. Could you just expand on the implications of the China's Green Sword policy?
Most of the implications have been overseas where they.
So for a start, what is it?
So this is where China's banned recycled plastics.
So refusing to take in recycled plastics.
So,
okay.
yeah, so it had major implications in, I think, in the States and Australia, whereas actually central government's having to.
So China has been the primary buyer of the stuff, and it's no longer doing it.
So they've effectively, they're slowly relicensing, but it's more of a push around having their own internal product rather than looking for overseas. So there are still markets available throughout the world, but China was probably the most significant.
So the impact, I assume then the impact is because they were the major market, the price of recycled plastic has dropped, or there are fewer people willing to take it? And China being the obvious one who's unwilling to take it?
Yeah, a lot of it relates to the quality of the plastics. So where there's the lower quality recycled plastics, there are no markets at the moment. So a lot of countries, like certain...
So how does that affect Hamilton City Council?
No impact at this stage. Because ours,
Why not?
Because we do the curbside sort.
Yeah.
So we have a very high quality product, and all our markets, our contractor wasn't relying on China as a market.
Okay. So the stuff...
We take, excuse me, plastics
good
1 and 2, as
Say that
opposed, we just take plastics 1 and 2, which are the highest quality plastics.
And just what are they?
Your milk bottles and
bottles.
your fizzy drink bottles.
Okay. And they were never going to China, or China still accepts them?
China are accepting nothing.
Okay, so they were never going to China anyway, but they were going to markets which haven't yet. So the markets they used to go to, they still go to, and there's still demand for them.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Well, it's sort of an ever-changing commodity market for us. So at the moment, it's our contractor's responsibility to sell or get rid of the
Yep.
product. So but they just use various markets. But
Okay. So the contractor will bear the cost of this until such time as it's up for renegotiation and things like that, which is when?
well, this is what we're going through with the new service proposal.
This is all now. Okay, all right.
Yeah, and that's a separate item from this,
Yep.
separate issue as well.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, thanks. And Angela.
Thanks. So I just want to make sure that the task force, and this is certainly not directed at the chair, but that you are staying on point. When I read about the event in here, I thought, well, that's an operational thing. It's not to do with the task force. But you've said phase, we're waiting for phase 1 to come back, which is the housing thing. So you've been working on that, so that'll come to council. And then the task force's focus, and only focus after that, because we've done the waste minimisation plan, they did the review of that, is the second phase, isn't it? And that's the implementation, and then once that's done, of the contract, and then phase, well, it's not the implementation, it's the methodology around the contract and how it's all going to roll out. And the third phase of work they're doing is the communication stuff. That's right, isn't it? How we're going to roll it all out.
Education program,
And that's all that the task force is doing. It's not every day, like, hey, we're doing a great event, isn't this fantastic? Because this is a huge amount of work for them anyway.
Yeah, no, I think it...
You're staying on
excuse me
point
again.
with the terms of reference.
Yeah, so what Charlotte, myself and Trent like to do each task force meeting is just to do a quick roundup of what other areas we are impacting on in terms of waste. And a lot of events like the Sevens, produce a lot of waste, and that has an ongoing impact on how we manage our waste. So those are mainly just reports for interest.
Okay, so we can expect the housing review on the 19th of April.
So the housing review part 1 was completed maybe November last year,
Okay.
which went to the task force.
Has that come here with recommendations?
I don't think it has. Mark, has it? Not yet. No.
So when I look back on my resolutions, that is due to come back to council in some form in April. It's not here, so is that going to be included? Because there will be recommendations from the task force around how we're going to help people with accessibility, older people and things like that, do apartments and all of those things that actually the Deputy Mayor often has raised when we started this. So are we getting
Angela,
that?
I think that was, it's a good point, but I think it was in relation to the new contract, and in the
Okay.
intervening period, we've extended the life of the existing one by a year, I think.
Yeah.
So
All right.
you're right about the timing, but we may have to adjust. It didn't make sense to do that 2 years ahead of the thing necessarily.
Okay. No, look, that's fine. I'm just following along with the terms of reference.
Oh, no,
and
absolutely.
watching what I'm
Excuse me.
expecting to see come forward for decisions.
There is a lot of information that will be going to the next task force, which I'm guessing will then, I think we have it down for May. But as Chair said, because there's been, a bit of juggling with
I will ask for a
contracts.
flag to be put in the note, in the minutes about that, so that we can make sure we don't sort of lose track of it.
Yeah, great.
It's fine.
Anything else, Angela? Thanks. Gary, you had another one?
Sorry, just to get real clear on this green sword thing. So it has had no impact on our negotiations with our provider?
I think we're still going through negotiations for our preferred
Provider.
provider.
Yeah.
So at this stage, I think we're just in the position it was agreed to provide a letter of intent, and so what we're waiting for them is to come back in terms of that letter of intent.
We couldn't finalise things, Gary, until we've set it in the LTP because there's the costs change,
Okay.
and that's got to be approved on the 30th of June or whatever, and then we can do, or the letter of intent is a holding action until then.
Okay, so the, okay. 'Cause
So we have to, then the staff have to go off and legally do the legal negotiations after that, presuming we still keep it in the LTP.
okay, thank you.
Gary has asked quite clearly, has Green Sword affected our new our negotiations that we had pretty well wrapped up and finished, and then Green Sword has come since?
So,
I mean, he didn't say
yeah.
this specifically as that, but
So what has occurred with Greensward is what was proposed. The contractor has come back and asked for consideration around glass separation in a bin by itself rather than commingled.
So what's the implication of that? About the bin? Is it?
It would be retaining the blue bin, excuse me.
green bin.
Yeah, purely for glass. Now, glass is the highest commodity that we have. And because the suppliers, those receiving the glass are now, they're now requesting a much lower contamination rate. And when we have glass mixed in with the other recyclables, then we tend to have a much higher contamination rate because of broken bits of glass and the like. So what they're saying is, which is similar to a lot of other parts of the country, is that we'll just keep glass separate to keep the revenue from the glass as high as we can.
Which is different than the current contract.
Well,
Because the green bin, you
currently
can
it's
put quite a few
commingled.
things in, can't you?
Yeah, you can do glass card and 1 and 2s, tins, etc. So the only difference is keeping the glass out.
Yeah, which,
Gary, you have identified, you just reminded me that I've got a feeling that in the General Manager's submission to our LTP, we are going to need, and we had a little bit of a discussion about this at the last Waste Task Force, we're going to need to have a paragraph identifying that as a potential different cost,
Yeah.
presumably, in that to the current LTP proposal, because having the extra container, so there's 4 rather than 3 containers, I think that makes it, an extra one anyway, and it would involve different costs for us once that new contract starts, potentially.
if that's the case, that's quite a material difference. I mean, there will be some cost implication, no doubt, but certainly, cost to our our residents in terms of having yet another bin to put out
No,
there.
you're right. Since we voted on the LTP, this has come to light with China's announcement and the...
That was the sort of thing I was trying to
Yeah.
get from asking about
No,
this.
you're right,
Yeah.
and sorry for not thinking of that earlier, actually. But I think, Eva Lisa, we need to get you and Chris's office, basically, to have a look at exactly what's needed to come back to us in that GM submission thing. That's where we identify would need to come back, because it's not the
Okay.
public won't know about that.
Because that won't have gone out to public submission, are they?
No.
Yeah.
Other than by them having read it in the news and
Yeah,
thinking through the implications themselves.
Okay.
It was.
I think, if I can just add to that, what was put through in terms of the business case costs was initially on the option that the contractors come back to ask for, and I think that was the funding that was put through for on the LTP.
Yeah, we just need to check that, because
Yeah.
it wasn't clear whether that was the case, or that was the final price that we put in the draft LTP, Trent. I think that was the discussion we had at the
Yeah.
last Waste Management Committee Task Force meeting. So I think we need, we'll certainly clarify that, Gary.
Thank you.
and We'll come back either at the next meeting of this committee if there's no change needed, or through the Chief Executive's submission if there is a change needed. How about that? Yeah, thanks. Is there any other, oh yeah, sorry, Siggy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your report. Look, just one quick question. Like you said, the plastic commodity market could change continuously, couldn't it? And it does change. There's constantly new things coming up, and with the bricks, the plastic bricks and all that kind of stuff. Do you, I mean, now with the 10-year plan, we get some more money for waste minimization, all that kind of stuff. But is it hard to foresee what other things could change in the next 2 years until we finally implement what we've set out to do? Can you see there's some other changes in the wings of, I don't know, you've heard of? I mean, worldwide things are changing continuously. So it's really, do you find it hard to plan sometimes for things?
Well, yes and no. I mean, the commodity market for waste peaks and troughs, always has done and likely always will. Ideally, we would like to go down the path of retaining the waste and utilising it inshore, not offshore, for a number of reasons. It's a whole circular economy. Yeah. As it stands right now, there is a global dip in the price of recyclables, and part of our behaviour change plan has from the start been about reducing the waste. So while we encourage people to recycle more, we would actually like a much bigger focus on reduction, and that comes right the way through the waste plan. That said, there are a couple of pretty exciting innovations that we're in discussions with at the moment, with various bodies out there. So I think it's all a big opportunity for the country, as do a lot of other countries as well. But as I say, waste peaks and troughs. And can we foresee what's going to happen? Absolutely not.
There's definitely a push from central government at the moment for onshore processing of recycled
Fabulous.
materials, so there's not a reliance on international markets.
Yeah.
That'll be wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions, Chair. Does this new China policy, does it affect our previous thinking where we were going to extend the plastics from just 1 and 2s up to all of the other grades and have those in the one bin, which was part of the proposed new regime?
Yep.
Normally the issue with talk about the lower quality and contaminated product is it's not so much, it's plastic, and with plastic's okay. It's when you've got glass, broken
That's when you've got glass. Okay. And then just a follow-on question to that with the glass, does that mean if we put that in a separate bin to the plastic, is that another truck coming around to collect the glass separate from the plastic, or will the same truck pick it but put it into different hoppers on the back of the truck?
That will be up to contractor. But another point worth being mindful of is that this will be every second week. So no one will be having 4 bins out each week. We'll be doing a rubbish.
So there could be a rotation there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what do the contractors say to that? Are they looking at another truck, or are they thinking that there are better ways of managing the 2 bins, the 2 separate bins?
That's it.
That we're just waiting for them to come back to us at the moment. Because
Right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, we'll keep moving on. We'll let Leah do his stuff now, which is 2 things. There's on page 15, the strategic regional collaboration, and we'll follow that with the page 17, the sub-regional waters collaboration update. Oh, yep, thanks for reminding me. Councillor James has volunteered to not speak for more than one. No.
That's right. You've got another 9 items to go, and I know a couple of them have to
no
leave by
speeches
6:30.
more than 3 minutes, only 1 lot of questioning. Okay, is everyone happy with that as the rule? And Gary's out of the room, so that's the other part. And the media's gone. Okay, with all of those, there's no grandstanding, we're straight into it.
Can I move to vote the next 9 items through, please?
Sorry?
Yeah.
So you've just extended the meeting by 1 minute saying that. Okay, I take it everyone's happy with that. We'll note that down, and we're into Blair's brief reports.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Dave. So look, I'm just going to talk across paragraph 17 to 45 at the moment, which is the strategic regional collaboration. Just highlight a couple of things of note, or three things of note. Just firstly, for the mayoral forum on Monday, there is going to be a couple of three significant discussions. One is on the regional economic development establishment process, and just provide an update to the mayoral forum and seeking their endorsement that the process is heading in the right direction, which is important for this council because we've pledged a $90,000 fund in the current year to partially fund the establishment phase. So I'll then bring a report back to this to council, subsequent to the mayoral forum, recommending that, provided mayoral forum is happy, recommending that our $90,000 should be released. Secondly, there's going to be discussion around a series of initiatives, one of which is alcohol and local alcohol policies, following our council's decision to stop that process. And one of those will be the discussion of a remit around advocacy on local alcohol policies in terms of legislative change. The second, just want to refer to is under the heading of future-proof. There is a line with future-proof. Councillor Chair Dave and Mayor Andrew went to Wellington about 3 or 4 weeks ago and met with Minister Twyford along with the Chief Executive and myself and the other councils in the sub-region area along with Tainui to look at opportunities to accelerate initiatives on the Auckland to Hamilton corridor. And this was really around how we can give that corridor a boost in terms of both housing, economic development and I guess social initiatives, and part of that was also a link to the passenger rail initiative. And so that work is now leading to an Auckland-Hamilton corridor plan. It's in the early stages. We are working closely with MB and other government agencies. There is going to be quite a substantial project built around that. But part of that is really how we can accelerate things such as housing through some of the tools that the government are proposing, such as urban development authority, special housing areas, special purpose vehicles, infrastructure bonds, alignment with other government agencies in terms of some of their activities to really maximise the potential of the growth that's happening between Auckland and Hamilton and all the planning that we've done across those two councils. So that piece of work is occurring. It's fair to say that it's probably not happening as fast as Hamilton would like, and certainly with Chairman Dave and Mayor Andrew's assistance, I'm providing quite a strong voice to the government agencies around keeping that moving at some pace and not being sort of held up with some of the timeframes of government. So just as that becomes more formal, I'll certainly give you more comprehensive updates on that piece of work. Just finally, through the point on regional fuel tax, there was some email discussion amongst some of the councillors around the new legislation that's been introduced to Parliament, allowing Auckland to levy a fuel tax, but also to enable other councils in the future to introduce a fuel tax from January 2021. We will be preparing a submission for Council's consideration, and that'll come to the Council on the 19th of April, just outlining support for the legislation. It's not about our Council saying whether we want to introduce a fuel tax or not, it's more a case of just supporting the legislation enables councils to consider that in the future. And so just outlining our support for that piece of legislation. So that will come to Council along with other matters on the 19th of April. So Councillor Dave, happy to take any questions.
Thanks. Questions on that section through until 45, paragraph 45. I've got Angela.
Thanks, Chair. I just have one, Blair. Look, why aren't we, or have we, thought about, and there are more ways to skin a cat with a regional fuel tax, and the excise tax that the government gets is 66 cents per litre, and then there's GST on top, so it's a tax of a tax. Are we looking, can we be a bit more creative around this? Because I'm not in favour of taxing residents for their petrol, but why don't, you know, it's a far call, but why aren't we looking at changing the measurement within the tax that's already there? Because we get, what, 0.03 cents or something for
Yeah,
our
so-
regional fuel tax?
So currently,
No, we get just under a cent, don't we?
Just under a cent,
it's
okay.
0.6 of a cent plus GST for petrol and
Yeah.
0.3 of a cent plus GST for diesel.
For
so it's-
diesel, but the government gets 66 cents per litre.
under a separate piece of legislation, excise
Yeah, for
duty.
excise tax.
Yes.
So why aren't we looking at that? Because the government are coming to us and saying, no, 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 let's look at this a different way.
So I think if you look at the regional land transport submission that's later on the agenda for today and the slight amendment to the wording of that, that particular action doesn't preclude other types of opportunities to raise funds. So whilst the discussion has been a fuel tax, that doesn't preclude things such
No.
as congestion charging, utilising technology such as GPS, because I guess, Angela, if we look longer term, vehicles not burning fuel won't be paying this tax. So if you look to electric vehicles, for example, how do you capture those? So things such as charges based on distance travelled, which is a different methodology altogether, may be where the future is going. Certainly, I've had conversations with the Ministry of Transport about that, and the RLTP, which is where this action is contained in terms of across the region, allows that type of
Yeah,
opportunity.
I guess my question is there a better opportunity for us to look at the GST on this, the tax on the tax, and try and look at that? Because if that was directed our way, that's 15, well, whatever that is, on 66 cents,
Angela, could I
15%.
suggest that you actually discuss that when that comes back
Okay,
and
yeah,
have
yeah.
something prepared for that? Maybe Blair can help you with
Yeah.
give
Can
you
I just-
advance on that wording.
Can I just raise that very, very briefly? Minister of Local Government talked to Zone 2 on Friday, and one of the priorities of the government is a funding review that they're looking to
Yeah.
announce very shortly. Almost the son of Shand, if you want to refer to something, and things such as all sources of revenue for local government, including GST,
Okay.
could be considered as part of that.
See, we're required, if we're going to submit, we're required to submit
Yeah.
on what they're putting up, and they're putting up petrol tax
Yeah.
for the future. So if when that draft submission comes back to us, that's the time to say, that's not such a good idea, why don't you do this? Yeah. Okay, we've got Andrew now, thanks.
What's the South Waikato Economic Development Action Plan?
So that was what Jason Dawson referred to briefly when he was here. It's an initiative led by the South Waikato District Council and Waikato Means Business. It's really around how can they boost the economy in that part of the region. So it's looking at initiatives in the South Waikato to create jobs, to create economic activity, Andrew.
So you said that when's the $90,000 for the Waikato plan that we're putting up? When's
No,
that?
that's relating to the Waikato Regional Economic Development Agency.
Okay.
So that's our contribution to enable the work that's been done right now this current year to set it up. So I would bring that back to a future council meeting. So we have a resolution, Andrew, to support the establishment by $90,000, subject to some conditions being met, and I'm going to bring that back to our council to agree we've met those conditions.
Who put up the seed money to set that up?
We are one of a number of entities putting the seed money up. So
Who put up the original money to set up the original plan?
the original Waikato Means Business was primarily Waikato Regional Council.
And how much did they put up?
Look, I don't have those numbers with me, but it's certainly a substantial amount of money over a number of years. So they've been the primary funder.
And are we putting any money up between now and 30th of June? Any more money for the Waikato plan?
Nothing beyond what we've already
Committed to. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. So, just before we go,
The Waikato plan is effective when it's about collaboration, when we've got both our local councils turning their backs on us on waters. And this is about pulling us together as a team.
Yeah, look, I think that's one of the challenges, Andrew, of collaboration, and I guess that will be.
I mean, this is basic stuff, isn't it? That
Yeah.
Waikato-
I mean, I think the issue you're raising is the mixed messages that we each send to each other around how we support various collaborative initiatives, and waters is one example. Some of the debate on some other things. So certainly the Waikato plan, if it's judged against that, then certainly it's mixed. And so you'll note in my report.
How can it be mixed? How can that be a mixed message?
Because there are some successes, but there
No,
are...
I'm talking, you said when it comes to waters, it's a mixed message. How can
is
it
it?
be
Okay.
mixed when it comes to our waters?
certainly when it comes to waters, it's not
It's
mixed.
totally failed, hasn't it?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Can I just add...
Andrew, I think when you, Your Worship, I think when you ask a question, you have to be prepared to listen to the answer. And I don't think you were then.
just-
So give the staff member a fair go.
Can I just
No,
add...
hang on. He said when it come to waters, the message was mixed. When it came
Yeah,
to
and when
waters,
he was giving an answer, you...
it wasn't mixed.
You, in the middle of his answer, you interrupted him and threw down your pen and...
To clarify through the chair, what I was referring to is, I was referring to the mixed messages of collaboration that the Waikato Plan represents. But what I would say, Council, is that there's a resolution here around the Waikato Plan for us to review our participation by the 30th of June. I will bring a report to this Council just prior to the 30th of June where the Council can evaluate the Waikato Plan's success to this date, the opportunities for the future, and determine whether you wish to participate or not. And that will be a comprehensive report for you to make that decision.
And that'll be to a full council meeting or to here?
It'll be to a full council meeting, yeah.
Open on Waikato Men's business so that it can survive when we not support the Waikato Plan anymore?
Correct. I have very much made that clear in terms of the governance reporting mechanisms for Waikato Regional Economic Development Agency, that it can report to the Mayoral Forum or Waikato Plan, so it leaves that door completely open.
Okay, thanks. I also want to congratulate Blair on coming up with an entirely new term that I haven't seen before in paragraph 24, thought leadership. So we can all work out how to include that in our future speeches. Thanks. Sub-regional waters collaboration or lack thereof, paragraph 46 through to 48.
Yes, I think paragraph 48 is really the important point here, Mr Chair. So off the back of the decision of Waipa to decline the opportunity to collaborate with the Shared Waters Management Company, I still want to raise that we, off the back of good asset management planning, still need to look for opportunities to collaborate in things such as asset management, the delivery of growth infrastructure, consent monitoring, I guess meeting our consent requirements, and I guess things such as iwi engagement. There are a number of areas where we still have a need, particularly in the delivery of our major growth water and wastewater infrastructure. And so really just wanting to note, and there is a resolution to this effect, that we, off the back of good asset management planning, need to continue these discussions with our neighbouring councils. Now, in spite of not having an entity structure, such as a company being formed, we believe that there are, over the medium term, good opportunities for us to think about how we deliver, particularly for us, our growth infrastructure and some of the elements of the services of water and wastewater in a collaborative sense. And we have, for example, through the Future-Proof strategy, a 3 Waters group, which is chaired by Andrew Parsons, and we'll be utilising that to make sure that we, as we plan for the growth of the sub-region, plan for the growth around Hamilton, that we are thinking smartly in terms of how we deliver our water and wastewater services. So that's what the resolutions at the front of the report are covering off. Number one, stopping any further work on the Shared Waters Management Company. Secondly, just noting that we as staff will continue to have and investigate collaborative opportunities off the back of good asset management planning.
Thanks. We've got questions from Rob and then Mark.
So thanks, Chair. So in your second sentence in paragraph 48, no, sorry, that you, I'm reading the wrong part now, where you said that we won't do any further work. It must have been back a bit.
That's the resolution, Rob.
That's in regards to the Shared Waters Management Company.
Sorry, in the resolution.
Page 14.
Given the comments by Mayor Alan Sanson at our briefing the other day, and what they're doing and the opportunity, not necessarily to get into committed work with them, I assume from what you've just told us that dialogue will continue as to where we might find some opportunities to link with them.
Yes.
In terms of outcomes, which would be good not only for them but also for us.
Correct. So the not do any further work is specifically relating to the Shared Waters Management Company with Waipa. But absolutely, we will be having active conversations with Waikato, with Waipa and their staff and in fact Watercare as well. So and Wellington Waters in terms of how we can look to take advantage of opportunities, particularly in the asset management, delivery of capital infrastructure for a growing city. There There are absolutely some matters which have always been important to us throughout this entire journey, which comes back to we're a growing city, we're landlocked, relatively small land area. We need to start thinking about how we provide water and wastewater services beyond our boundary, because as Hamilton continues to grow, we can't continue to just rely on one plant for water and one plant for wastewater.
And with all the meetings that we're having with central government, you know, the trips to Wellington and Whangamata last week, we had Namaya Mahuta speaking. Are you getting a sense that the central government might want to intervene around this waters area? Because, you know, it is something that three of us went over to hear the number 2 report on the Hastings water issue, and quite clearly central government acknowledged that there is a real responsibility that they have to make sure that our water is drinkable and remains so. So government is sensing a responsibility there, and if we're not prepared to move, it appears they might move for us. So are you getting a sense that there may be some momentum in central government where they might come and pick us up by our shirt collars and tell us this is what you've got to do?
Certainly that's the message that the Minister is outlining quite a lot, and I sat with her over lunch on Friday and had a long conversation on this very topic, and you know, she was naturally very disappointed with the recent decision to not proceed with the company. So that's probably steeled her resolve to become far more active in the space and look for solutions. And so there are two work streams. Number one is the outcome of the Havelock North will be reported within the next 1 to 2 weeks. That report's going through Cabinet. In fact, it's gone through Cabinet. It's just about to be announced. Secondly, there is an infrastructure review being conducted by the Department of Internal Affairs, which will report later this year, looking at infrastructure challenges and solutions for the sector. So the government are definitely getting serious now. There's no doubt about it that there's going to be action in terms of water regulation around drinking water standards, but there's also going to be, I think, a lot stronger direction, potentially intervention around how we actually deliver water services. So Rob, you know, our position has always been we should try and stay ahead of that process and find solutions that work for us as opposed to have things imposed upon us. So I guess what I'm referring to here and in my conversation with Naya is we are still actively wanting to find outcomes that work for Hamilton. And I gave her a number of suggestions that need to be thought about as well in terms of how we can go forward. And certainly my discussion with her was that the shared waters management model, which is very much the Wellington Waters model, was workable. In her eyes, she thought that was a fantastic model. She really supports that approach. So I guess watch this space.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mark, please.
I want to gently extend that a wee bit, because I'd written down here budget. So the kind of work you're carrying on, will we be able to rely on the reports and that we've done already?
Yes.
Yeah, cool.
So most of the work, Mark, will be conversations.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, I think we've learned a huge amount through the journey to date. It's really with myself, Andrew Parsons, Chris Allen, etc., my reporter, having the conversations with the right people and then bringing those opportunities back to council to consider.
And notwithstanding that you say we want to stay ahead of the spear chucker and stay ahead in these discussions, perhaps the mood of the government could be that we let them take some of the initiative as well with the discussions, like bring them into the tent a bit more.
Yeah, no, I think if you look at the, going back to my earlier comment on the Auckland-Hamilton corridor and the corridor plan, and that's going to be a forum where some of these initiatives will get airtime. And some of those issues may be who owns some of this infrastructure. If we need new infrastructure, who potentially could deliver it if it's not us, if we can't afford it? And so there are a number of discussion topics that could come up around that, around how we smartly as a sector work with the government to find solutions for a rapidly growing area that still needs to deliver world-class water and wastewater services in an environment that's sensitive.
Yep.
We've got healthy rivers with the Waikato River, increasing compliance and consent obligations to meet. So we've got to find solutions, and the government are naturally a partner to help us with those.
Do they give any hint that they might get involved in the ownership of the assets? So I mean, they've kind of backed off every time we've, like, for example, the HIF and all the other opportunities we've
not ownership. I think they recognise that that's a sensitive issue, but I think potentially creating opportunities for other ownership models to be available, they may well take a part in that.
Right.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Without wanting to
Hopefully
prolong
that's
questioning too much, just given the significance of the Waipa water decision, and given the signal we're getting from the government, hey, we really need to be pushing on here. Is it time that we as a council looked at discussions that have been going in the past, you know, about merging with Waipa, about bringing back those sorts of discussions again, you know, not just with water, but just, is it time to relook at those discussions?
Jeff, you should have done that when the media were here.
I know.
Okay.
But hang on, seriously though,
I can give a
You're worse than the mayor.
it was discussed back in Bob Simcox, you know, when he was mayor back in that time.
You remember
Is it time to?
So, Jeff, possibly this is a helpful answer. We are just starting the early stages of a piece of work looking at what Hamilton's what the growth of Hamilton over a 100-year time frame looks like, and what does that mean for thinking and planning for land use and infrastructure in over a 100-year horizon. So that certainly speaks to our current boundaries as we know them being full, and how do we then accommodate growth in a 100-year time frame. So that gives you a bit of an answer. We've yet to obviously work through what that may look like in terms of an outcome, but clearly we need to look over a longer time frame and make sure that our land use planning and our thinking with our neighbours is taking account of that.
Okay. Now, councillors, we're moving on to Robin Denton. It's got some issue. You are down there. Yeah.
Just to be clear, that extra land is to allow us to plan for 100 years, not to take over Waipa, not to take over Cambridge and Te Awamutu.
I did not want to start a discussion on this, so we'll call that off there.
Correct.
And Blair's out of the seat and Robin's in.
Sorry, what was your reply?
Andrew, we're not having a discussion on that. No, sorry.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Robin, thanks. You and Jeff can have a talk outside about it. Otherwise, I'll bring my sleeping bag. Okay, with Robin, we're going to do the last two parts of the GM's report, have our vote on that, and then go on to the two other items that she's got on the paper over the back. But the ones that she's talking about now, page 18, which is the fatal crash data, paragraph 49, followed by the Access Hamilton update, 56 underneath. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you, Councillor Dave. So I guess for the fatal crash data, just to give members an update, as you'll be aware, we had a fatal crash last week on Karamea Road. So the data in on attachment 3, which is page 32 of the agenda, I've just had a quick update of that. Obviously we need to add the one for Hamilton City, but there have also been additional crashes in April for other parts of the Waikato region, such that our total now stands at 24 for year to date. That compares with 16 for the same time in 2017 and 22 for 2016.
I think our immediate objective is to keep Hamilton's on the downward trend. So I know we don't have all the information, but what have we sort of learnt in terms of what caused the accident and anything? Is there anything we could do in that area, in a engineering sense or organisational sense?
No, at this stage I don't believe there's anything from a roading perspective. It would appear that there may have been a medical event, but that's obviously needs to be worked through the appropriate mechanisms before we can finalise that.
So it was a head-on on a straight stretch of road?
It was, yes.
Yep. Sorry, I was just jumping in front of Siggy there.
It was actually on a similar vein. So, do we find out when we hear about these crashes, fatal crashes, that what's actually happening? Because some of them could be. I mean, I heard that rumour that it could have been a heart attack, possibly a heart attack or something. We have to really divide that up, don't we? Because not all roads, it doesn't mean that they're unsafe. It's just sometimes stuff like that happens, that it's a medical event. So that doesn't mean we should make the road safer, because again, it comes back to people safer.
Yes, look, it's always a balance. We get notified by the police. If possible, we will, if the police have any concerns, we may actually go out to the crash site with them to have a look. And if there's anything that we need to do urgently, then we get on and get that done. In this sort of case, medical events are really hard to deal with, but it's a matter of looking at to see if there is anything else that we could have done. For other ones where people make mistakes, is where there are opportunities potentially for us to do changes. But it's a matter of dealing with each on a case-by-case basis, and it's putting it in the mix, because fatal crashes, serious injury crashes, they all need to be considered together.
Okay, thank you.
Councillors, the purpose for having this on the report on the agenda is because we have a Vision Zero policy, so we need to see what we need to do to get there. Sorry, Leo's next question.
I thought today we were 25 originally.
Yeah, so I went on and had a quick look at, and it said 25, but then when I went into the data, which actually listed by TLA, it's got 24. So I'm somewhat stuck with the MOT data.
How far in the city boundaries is this one on Tuikami Road?
So it was between Temple View and the city, so it was well within the city boundary.
We couldn't move it on them, but could we?
No.
It might be a number of years before we can actually see if this was a medical, because it's all got to go through the coroner.
Yes,
And
correct.
he'll make a call. And it could be 2 or 3 years away, so.
Is that right?
Tough.
Okay, so if there's no further questions
Sorry,
on that...
I've got Mayor Andrew.
Sorry?
Yeah, I just want to, with consultation on changes that we make to either our roads or our footpaths, when we make those changes, and going back to what happened in Dinsdale a couple of years ago, we didn't consult properly and we ended up with an issue that went on and on. And I just want to make sure that we are consulting properly, and I'm referring specifically to the fatal accident that happened on Sunshine Avenue, yeah, and that we are coming in now and painting the footpaths as cycleways, and we haven't consulted. Some of the shop owners believe that we may not have consulted to the level that we should have, and we've given them. We're basically I just wonder if you can look into that. And well, there's a big picture here of ensuring that we do consult properly and just don't railroad things through. And secondly is specifically this specific case where they believe that they're being told, not consulted with. Now that doesn't mean that that's how staff see it. There will very likely be another side to this, but what I've been told is they've been told it's happening in 2 weeks' time, and it's not consultation.
No, they've had consultation prior to this. This is the notification. So we do consultation first, and then we get contracts let, and then we do notification when work's about to start.
So, Robin, what's the steps involved? What's involved in consultation in this sort of road safety improvements?
Yeah, so I guess it comes into the development of the discretionary transport program. So we work with councillors to come up with a program of works, and often they respond to where there's been fatal crashes, or there've been issues raised by, might be members of the public or whatever. So we have some early draft plans of what we're looking at, and we generally go out and consult on those, and given the feedback and put everything together to then finalise a design, go out and get a contractor on board, and then we put in notification to say, further to that, we've now got a contractor on board and you can expect to see some work in your area.
So in this case, the someone from Transportation Unit would have gone out there with these early draft plans.
I believe so, so I need to follow up on that.
Yeah.
I need to follow up on that, but that's generally the process. So I would agree that the information that they've been given in the last week to say work is starting would be notification, but there should have been consultation.
So this is specifically the shops,
On the south west corner.
Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
they don't believe they're being consulted with.
okay.
So if we can follow up on that. But I think the bigger issue, and I think you're doing it very well, consultation, and I think we have to be careful not to lose track of that, even on these little jobs like this here.
Very much.
Because this appears to be quite small, it's just painting our own footpath, but
I understand it has a little bit of an impact as
Yeah.
to where people are parking illegally at the moment on some of that footpath as well, so.
yeah,
So yeah, that's always the difficulty.
yeah,
No, that's fine, I'm happy to follow up on that.
thank you.
Thanks. I suggested Andrew bring that up in this section because it resulted from a fatal last year. So we're on to the Access Hamilton Task Force update, which starts at paragraph 56 through to 76.
So yes, obviously we had the meeting February the 16th. There's a quick overview of the key topics that were covered, some of which flow through into further reports. So the speed management plan is covered in more detail in a separate report to this committee. Discretionary transport program, basically that's what we're now delivering, and councillors will be given an update on when that work's coming out through the exec update. Next year's program, we're just starting in the early stages of developing that, and we'll be taking some plans through the the Access Hamilton Task Force. The Road to Turner North community update, that was the map that Councillor Dave held up first thing this morning. So that project is ongoing, and the open day is on the 18th of April, and the safety summit we've reported back on. So next meeting 4th of April. Happy to take any questions.
Yep. Okay, questions on that part of the report? If not, quite a few councillors have been coming to the Access Hamilton Task Force meetings, which is good. And if you want to discuss any particular improvements that you think are needed or public is giving you feedback on, it's a good place to hook them onto. At the moment, we're meeting every fortnight, but we've got different topics each time. So we able within a month should be able to discuss any issues like that, or if they're urgent, more quickly than that. Ryan, yeah. 2 hours, but we have an agenda, and you wouldn't have to necessarily be there for the whole lot. We could we can just work out when that is. Yeah. Gary doesn't usually come to them, so they're not so long. Yeah, of course. It's the best time to talk about people behind their back when they're not there. Okay. There's no other parts of this report, so I'll just go to the staff recommendation on page 2, which has got A, receives the report, and then B and C relate to the shared waters issue. And I'm going to move it, seconded by James. Just make sure you're aware of what you're voting for on B and C. We've got to continue to investigate the collaboration side without that looking at the particular shared waters company anymore. That's B, that the work stops on that particular element. So I'm not going to speak any more to it. I've got a seconder from James. Anyone want to talk on that? If not, the show of hands, those in favour, against, carried, thanks, unanimous. It's carried with acclamation and enthusiasm. And Robin's got 2 more issues, so number 10, page 71. So we'll just get that page. So that, oh, you had the extra piece of paper on your desk, which is an updated version with the changes in yellow, the changes from your council report. Except I don't think I had it. Okay, Robin.
Okay, so as outlined, the draft in the report on page 73 has been superseded by a paper put out. I think it should have been circulated to you yesterday afternoon. So the Regional Land Transport Plan is a document that pulls together the regional activities in land transport. Is meant to be a 6-year document but has a 3-year review update, so we're just in the middle of the review update for this particular one. Has been a piece of work that's been done collaboratively with all of the various councils over the last 18 months, with Councillor Dave being the HCC rep. So my report's been slightly superseded because the GPS has come out, but the early signals that we'd been given by the Minister have put us in good stead, and I believe that the draft document that they have pulled together puts us in a very good position to then take advantage of the various funding opportunities that the GPS will put forward to us. So in general, the submission is supportive of the draft Regional Land Transport Plan, with specific points being noted where there are key issues for Hamilton City that we are supporting, and one minor change being in section covered under paragraph 5.3, section 311 affordability, which was with regard to the fuel tax, whereby we wished to have reference to Hamilton City specifically being the one that would lead any future regional fuel tax applications. But I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Yeah, councillors, I appreciate that some of this, there have been some changes, but they're not dramatic changes from what's in here. So hopefully you're okay if this is the only place we've got to discuss it before we send it off. The deadline comes. So I've got Leo first. Thanks.
Yeah, Robin, the draft Regional Land Transport Plan under 4.0 or 4.2 it is, we are actually supporting the safe systems approach. Okay.
Yes.
And the safe systems approach, of course, is a 2010 strategy where it goes from 2010 to 2020. And it's got the 4 pillars, which is your safe roads and roadsides, sorry, safe speeds, safe vehicles and safe road use. To me, it doesn't seem to be working very well, because when you look at history, back in 1999, they came with the 2010 strategy, and the 2010 strategy was to have no more than 300 deaths and 4,500 injuries by the year 2010. And back in 1999, we had a road toll of 509, and I didn't believe we could actually achieve 300 by 2010. But believe it or not, in 2011, we actually got down to a road toll of 284. And when I look at our 12-month rolling road toll at the present time, for the last 12 months, we've now killed 396 people. So it seems to me that this safer journeys approach is not all it's cracked up to be. And I'd rather see, and we've got Vision Zero, which is great, but we actually haven't got a target to work to. And I would really like this 2020 strategy, which I think they're developing at the present time, to actually put some numbers on there, which is going to be zero, and we know that's not going to happen. But yeah, I'm just wondering whether we're going the right, well, it's not ours, but whether central government are going the right way about this.
So there was quite a lot of discussion at the Safety Summit yesterday.
Was there?
Yes. And one of the key messages that the Minister took away was the desire for us to have some key measures, some key accountabilities being put in place. I believe that the safe system approach is still the right way to go, but I don't think that we've actually really mastered the art of doing such yet. And I think that having the Vision Zero as being, you know, the really strong vision will help with that. And part of the rollout is really making sure that everyone who has a role to play in the system actually understands what their role is to play, and I don't believe that that's happened well enough yet. And they're the sorts of things that have been discussed.
Robin, do you think we could spell that out along those lines a little bit? Because I think Leo's point would be somewhat of agreement with people. Clearly something's going in the wrong direction at the moment. Is there a way of spelling out what you just said and putting in forward our Vision Zero, which is a aspirational target, as we talked about before, but clearly it doesn't mean that you can trend upwards, though, and be successful?
Yes, we can have a look at that. I mean, the objective that they've put forward in the plan is that land transport in Waikato region is a safe system, working towards 0 deaths and serious injuries. So the region is also adopting that Vision Zero. So that is a change from where they've been previously.
Just specifically reinforce that.
Yeah.
But there were a couple of other measures that the Minister talked about yesterday. One was, was put to her that road policing numbers had gone down recently, and they should be going up, not down, and that they might have a chance of being more successful if they put some more funding into that area, which she said they were committed to doing.
Well, if I could just speak on that one. Back in 1998, police were under the pump because your road toll was trending way up. So they got all excited, and they actually had 232 guys who were actually dedicated to highway patrol. And now, of course, what's happening is, as we heard from the last road policing manager was here, we have conversations out there. The press is not here, and really it's a waste of time, to tell you the truth. You've got to really harden up, as far as I'm concerned, and give people something to remember the incident by, which is normally an infringement notice. And until the police actually harden up and get out there, and there's no substitute for being seen a police car on the side of the road with red and blue lights flashing and somebody being bailed up on the side of the road. And I'm just not seeing it. Recently I drove from here to Wellington and back and didn't even see a patrol car.
I think there's quite a bit of debate, and as I imagine there might even be here, around the type of enforcement, which what you're talking about, but there was quite wide agreement, and probably hopefully with you too, that we need more enforcement capability, more cops, more roading cops out
Cops
there.
to do something. I've probably got a vested interest here, though, so I better shut up.
They might bring you out of retirement, Leo. Can we talk a bit about that area? Because I think just judging around the table, people agree that it's not working. Safer systems is a bit of a slogan, not an action point. Clearly not a successful action point anyway. So if we could, would people be happy if we get that rephrased or beefed up a little bit along the lines of what Leo's talking about? Maybe not getting into the cops harden up comment.
So can I get an indication how do you want me to do a draft and circulate it again, or
When's the deadline?
yesterday?
Okay. Deadlines are just aspirational targets. I think, are we satisfied that Robin, as our manager in that area, has got the gist of it and can put it in herself? So okay. We might just include that in the resolution that we ask the manager, network operations team leader, is the title, to, why don't they just call her a bloody manager? Anyway, sorry, to update the report as per the discussion at the meeting. So then that gives her authority to put it in. Can we add that, Becca? As a C before the last one, which will be D. If that's okay? Are people okay
we'll
with that?
We'll also need to just change the resolution to be for draft 2 as well, please.
Draft 2 rather than draft 1, because draft 2 is what you've got in paper in front of you. Okay, so I'll move that. Seconded by, Jeff's turn now. He wants to prove he was here. Okay, any discussion on this? If not, I'll show of hands, those in favour, against, carried. Thanks very much. Thank you, Robin. So we're on to the speed management report immediately afterwards, page 76. Over to you, Robin.
Thank you. So basically, the point of this report is to start the process for two key things with regard to speed limits this year. Well, there's three actually. So one is to change the speed limit on Gordonton Road to 60 k's. The second one is to change the way the bylaw works so that we can move through getting changes done more quickly. And the third one is to develop a speed management plan. So in regard to the Gordonton Road speed limit, that's covered in part by one of the following reports on the Gordonton Road and Gordonton Thomas, and it really is that work that's driving the need for getting the speed limit changed. With regard to the change to the bylaw itself, we have made a change to the traffic bylaw back in 2015, where we moved what was previously included in the bylaw via schedules to be outside the bylaw in registers. And that's enabled us to work through the Regulatory and Hearings Committee, through Councillor Angela, to implement changes quickly and efficiently, and not having to go through the full special consultative procedure. And so the proposal is to make that change to the speed limits bylaw also. But we have to go through a special consultative procedure in order to make that change. So that's that one. And then thirdly, which is something we'd like to work in parallel, and I think is going to be very important for working with our stakeholders in the community, is the development of the speed management plan, which sets out what activities we're planning to do for the next potentially 3 years in speed management. So speed limits are just part of that. It includes any engineering works that we're planning to do, but also education work and working with the New Zealand Police, obviously, around any enforcement. So pulling that together in a consultative, using good engagement with our community and with our key stakeholders to get that in place for the end of this year, such that next year we will have the ability to make changes quickly. We will still have to do some consultation to comply with the speed limits rule, but the speed management plan will give everyone a good idea on where we're wanting to go and what we're wanting to achieve. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions on that?
One very quick
sorry.
one, Dave. Yeah, just, but I think I might have answered actually already. The Gordonton Road speed limit you're talking about between Wairere and Thomas.
Yes, we'd be going north of Thomas. We haven't decided quite exactly where,
Oh, yeah, okay.
but it'll so that the
Up the hill.
Thomas Road intersection will be included within that.
Right,
speed
but all the way
limit
back to
change.
the Wairere
Yes.
roundabout. So that's
Yeah.
Puketaha and Dajon.
Yes, that'll all be included.
Great,
Yes.
thank you. That's all I got.
Okay, so that sign will finally come to fruition. All right. Any other questions? Sorry, Andrew.
Haven't we got a resolution from the last triennium where we'll wait to see the outcome of the national, how they'll set the speed limits, and that will go with that? We'll just have to be
Yes, so-
careful that.
No, that has happened. So that was the report on the 28th of March outlined that. So that's
But
the
we are-
speed management guide and the new speed management rule have worked through all of that. So that national guidance is now all in place. And that will form the basis of that speed management plan development.
Okay, I just want to make sure it doesn't clash with that resolution. It's been sitting there for about 3 years.
No, it actually complies with it very
Yeah.
nicely. So that was, that report in March was for
Okay.
that reason.
Thanks, Robin.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, I'll put those, so we've got to move around sector? Yeah, we have? Yep. Okay, Mark and James? Okay, I'll put that resolution listed under number 4 there. Those in favour, against, that's carried, thanks. Unanimous again, as all our motions are.
Thank you.
What's that? Yes, oh, that's right, of course. I thought we might do the Gordonton Road corridor improvements straight after this. It sort of follows, if that's all right. Helen? Where's Helen? Hiding. Yeah. She's happy, I think. She loves listening to council discussions. So we're doing item 13, and then are you doing all of Chris Barton's, Andrew?
Yes, I can, yes.
Yep. So why don't we whip through your 4 then?
Sure, yep, I'm in your hands in terms of levels of detail.
Item 13, page 111.
So there's 2 key parts that are being progressed in Gordonton Road. I just want to make sure people clearly understand. So one is looking at the whole corridor from Waiari Drive through to the north up to where the expressway will cross it, which picks up the Darjon, Stoneleigh, Thomas Road, etc. And so we're progressing that in line with council's previous resolutions, and so it's a fairly comprehensive business case has been developed, and it'll look at not just cars but look at walking and cycling and other things as well. So the idea is that would be absolutely dovetailed with the work that comes out around the speed changes. I guess the key part of this report is to look for a decision in relation to the Thomas Gordon intersection. So previous council resolutions have set aside some money in this financial year to develop the design for the Thomas Gordonton intersection. And in the previous GNI report, we'd signalled that it was looking like traffic signals were the most viable, most safe option, coupled with the 60k speed environment. We've now gone to and held workshops with New Zealand Police, Automobile Association, Freight, etc. And there's an NZTA, and there's unanimous agreement that signals is the best form of treatment for that intersection, particularly given the expansion of the city to the east in the future, and all the other things that are happening in the general area. So the proposal here today, or the resolution here today, is to seek approval from this committee that yes, signals is the way to go, and then we'll move immediately into the design phase and get ready for construction as soon as the summer starts, which will be early October. So that lines up with the funding provisions that this committee signed off on, and lines up with the draft LTP, and it lines up with the speed limit proposed changes that Robin's just spoken to as well.
And the plan's on page 118
yes,
for that?
Sorry, I should have pointed that. So the plan specifically for the intersection is on page 118. So it's a fairly standard set of traffic lights, and what's not shown on the plan is these signals could accommodate some growth to the east if the boundary were to move sooner rather than later.
So it might become a crossroads rather than a T-end.
It's set up to become a crossroads if required, so it can react to the timing of expansion to the east, and it's also set up to accommodate pedestrian cycle movements across the road at the time we get eastern development as well. So happy to take questions.
Yep. Any questions on that? We've been signalled as one of the possibilities. Sorry, I've got James and then Andrew.
Okay, yeah, on point 21, page 113, it says about the land procurement. Obviously the lights minimises. Is there still a need to procure land? I wouldn't think there would have been if it's just lights.
Yeah. We're going to, with the signals allows us to do our very best to avoid triggering land procurement, but I can't absolutely rule it out until we finish the detailed design. There's just going to be some challenges with some level tie-ins, but we're doing everything in our power to avoid having to bring in property owners around land procurement. I think the land issues would predominantly relate to the district side, which is at the top of the page in this drawing, but my driver is to avoid the need for any land acquisition. But I can't promise at this point.
But the plan you have here shows it all within the city-owned corridor, right?
Shows it all within, yes.
And just put a bit of context here, there was another decent crash there on Sunday evening as well.
Yes, I understand that. It was
a lady turning right, heading south on Gordonton Road, turning right into Thomas Port in front of a vehicle coming straight through. You just can't control some people's behaviour sometimes. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, Andrew, thanks.
I know you've said you've set this up for the future, but the plan doesn't show that. I mean, there's no, where's your room for straight aheads and right hands and left hands and everything for the future? Or are you saying that you're setting up your light poles? I mean, it costs a lot of money to do an intersection like this. I thought at the last meeting we made it really clear to have, you know, it was going to be not a T intersection, it was going to be set up as a...
Crossroads, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So the driver is to avoid land acquisition because that brings in other parties and will slow down the delivery time. So I've been working on the basis that, you know, expediency in terms of implementing signals as a driver from this council. But in doing so, and I'm happy to go on record, the footprint for this intersection is set up so that this set of traffic lights would function as a crossroads. And in terms of, you know, through lanes and things, like, I don't have the drawing on the screen, but there, on the city side, there is a lot of land if optimisation or tweaks were needed in the future. But the signals arrangement you see in front of you is fundamentally set up for both a T intersection initially and is easily modified for crossroads. The other challenge is I don't have access to much detail around what might happen to the east. And we know it could be residential, but, you know, the density, the nature of the trips and, you know, any other interventions is a little bit of unknown, because if you shift the boundary, you'd have to go through a separate structure plan process under the district plan. So this drawing in front of you protects all of those options, minimises rework, you know, doesn't preclude development to the east.
Thank you.
Okay. So signal posts would not need to be moved, and the loops are cut into the tarmac and that sort of stuff.
We'll do the best we can to avoid moving that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, without knowing anything about what's to the east. So I can't give you an absolute promise where you don't have to move a pole. But shifting a pole is relatively cheap, but we'll do our best to have everything set up for a proper crossroad.
In some senses, this where we place our intersection will guide where the spine road will come out.
Yes, that's right.
Yep. Okay. Any other oh, sorry, we've got a few queuing up. Ryan, thanks.
Just a quick question on the Puketaha Gordonton one, Andrew. You mentioned...
Councillor, sorry, if you want to go to the map before that.
I've got a better map on the screen. It's lying on its side, so it's the north is on the left, east is at the top of the page, and the red circle in the middle is the Puketaha intersection.
Sorry, Ryan, just wants people to orient themselves, so see that middle one.
So, yeah, no, so just to clarify, I don't know if it's pre you having an idea, but with the upgrade down the road, would that likely be lights too, or a roundabout? Or?
Well, it was set up originally for a roundabout, and we'll have to work through that again, but the land on the city side at the time the St James development occurred was all those boundaries were set up for a roundabout.
Right.
The land on the east side, which is all in the district, so there's an old commercial building there, that was all in the district, so there's been no land protection on that side, but we're just going to have to methodically work through that, and we'll come back to council with the business case with what we think is the right solution, and then council can...
I imagine it'd be quite stilted if you had lights there and lights up the road too.
Well, look, roundabout could potentially be a really good outcome for Puketaha, because it would allow the banning of right turns at places like Stoneleigh, Darjon, for example. And so to make a right turn from those streets, you could actually head north and come around the Puketaha roundabout and come back down. So those are the kind of things we want to have a good look at, and then come back to you with a recommendation.
Sure. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Mark, thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. So am I right in with the Thomas Road, if it did become a crossroads, potentially the road that it crossed to would be this other end of the spine road from...
Oh, potentially, yeah. Quite likely. But again, that would require a structure plan process under the district plan, and that would come back to council for full engagement at the right time.
What sort of challenges it pose that that's not actually our land in there? I mean, can we influence the development that goes on in there? Or
to the east now?
Yeah, because I mean, that's the boundary of us and Waikato, right?
So this is outside of my expertise, but I'll do my best to answer because I don't think we've got planners in the room. But there's provisions in the Waikato district plan that recognise this as an expansion area.
Right.
So you know, things can happen within the limit of those rules in the district, but it is challenging to carve up the land for residential development because the district has a long-term strategic agreement with Hamilton City,
right.
and that this area has been signalled as an expansion area for the city,
yep.
and there's trigger dates for that. And I understand there's political conversations that may be happening about maybe bringing some of those forward. But the future city boundaries already been recognised between the two councils as being the Waikato Expressway alignment, and has been for some years.
Yeah, okay. No, that's cool. Probably I could go offline and talk with Blair about that sort of malarkey anyway.
Yep.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, councillors, you've had the summary and the questions there. We've got the recommendation, 3A and B on page 111, which I'll move, and seconded by Mark, got his hand up just before James. He got the silver medal. Those in favour, against, carried. Okay, that's done. We're on to 14, which is also in Andrew's development area, Borman Road Extension. That's page 121.
So I'll speak very quickly to this one and then go to questions. But Borman Road is has been part of the fabric of Rotorua for many, many years, and the city, I can't remember the exact date, but back in the early 2000s designated the road, so it means the city has obligations, financial responsibility to deliver the road. We've been doing that in partnership with developers for some time. This paper is about the extreme western connection to K Road, near River Road, and we've been working with a reluctant property owner there for some time now, and we're in a Public Works Act process around the land. We now own that land as a council, and there's an opportunity to use that property owner's contractor to get in there and build that short connection to K Road now. The contractor rates were competitively tendered by the developer, and we've done due diligence around that. We think they're fair and reasonable in this, and by going through this direct appointment would allow us to essentially have that link operational by Christmas. So that is the recommendation, that council agree to a direct appointment to Pemberton Civil to complete this link through to K Road.
And that's on page 121, the little yellow bit sort of in the middle left of the diagram of the plan there?
It's on mine, it's 122, I might have it, yeah. But it's that yellow bit near the river, near River Road. It's a very short length.
And what it'll also do, because Borman is going to become the main collector road through the upper middle part of Rotorua, it's going to reduce, the plan is it'll reduce the traffic on K Road to hopefully a decent extent, which will reduce some of the pressure on that at the moment.
Absolutely, it's one of the key components. There's a number of components. This is one of the key components to achieving that outcome. The whole of Borman Road is designated by council and reflected in the district plan as a minor arterial. So essentially this link will allow it to start performing that function.
Okay, so questions? I've got Siggy, thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Andrew, with the construction, it says here, we approved the award of a contract with Pemberton, blah, blah, for the construction of Borman Road with a sum, an approved contract sum of 1.5 million,
Yes.
550,000. So if it goes over, it costs more. Who has to pay for it?
Well, it would be a Hamilton City Council contract, so if it went over that approved amount, we would have to come back to this group or to council, and we would have to look at how we would deal with that cost overrun under that scenario. So there's, either it goes on risk and opportunities, or we look at scaling back other capital programs to offset the overrun. But look, let me assure you, we've cost overruns is something we seek to avoid. I think we've got a pretty good track record. We think this contract award value is appropriate given the scale of work. You know, we've done our due diligence and coming to this recommendation here today.
Okay, I'll trust you. How about that?
Never trust me.
Andrew might get a high fare rate for it like he did for that other road up in the south of the city. Any other oh, sorry, Mayor Andrew.
The other missing link on Borman Road, when's that likely to happen?
To the east, through to the chocolate factory, yes. You've caught me on that one. That's in the draft LTP. I just couldn't recall the dates off the top of my head. I'm hearing behind me 2021, 2022 for completion dates.
Thanks, Chris.
Because this is a nightmare for people navigating who aren't familiar with the area. With at the moment 3 Borman roads and a new Borman road. And
yes.
I actually am from Hamilton and I missed a meeting out there because it took me so long to find it on my GPS. In the end I was heading for the North Shore.
And you went all the way up there to work that out. There is a proposal, I think, that's going to come to us in a little while, like not today, but soon, for the renaming of the bits, because once that link goes through, it has to be, the naming situation has to be sorted. And the expressway cutting the last bit of it and things like that. So that's a future meeting, probably for the design and stuff of that, is it, Andrew? Or
Yes, we certainly can bring that back.
Yeah.
From 20 years ago to say on this, okay? Because I've just looked into it all.
Right, okay.
To say that a previous council had decided to keep it Boardman Road all the way through. So if you are going to look at renaming, you probably need to pull that out.
Yeah, there was, yeah, I'd like to say I can't recall 20 years from the past, but unfortunately I can. So there was a lot of debate at the time, including the establishment of the road called New Borman Road as well. But we can pull all that out and have a look.
We'll get a full report on that. Okay. All right, councillors, we're on to that recommendation. I'll move, seconded by Siggy. Okay. Those in favour, against, carried. Thanks. Number 15 is the Ruakura bulk water main, 125.
So again, this is a contract award report. So I guess the key context I need you to be aware of is this work forms part of Council's commitment in the developer agreement that you have with the two developers in Ruakura, so CPL and TGH. So in that PDA, which was approved by Council on 28th of July 2016 as a PX item, it included Hamilton City Council taking financial responsibility for delivering a new reservoir in Ruakura and the associated bulk mains. This report here is to award the bulk main work, which is critical to water supply to the area. The reservoir construction contract will come later. We're going to hold that one back till after the LTP decisions. It doesn't compromise the program in any way, but it's absolutely critical to Council if you're to achieve your commitments in the PDA, which is a full water supply and reservoir operational in 2020, that we approve this contract now and get going. It's been out to full public tender. There's 4 tenderers. Just of technical interest is we used a standard procurement methodology, which is has a supplier quality premium attached to it. So there's an evaluation before prices are even opened around the contractor's competency, the level of quality that they bring to bear, because remember, this reservoir and pipe work is strategically very important to the city and affects the whole city if we get it wrong. And so on page 126, you can see a little table that where the first column sets out the supplier quality premium payments, and they get deducted off the tender price once we open that later on. And so of interest here is the lowest tender isn't the recommended tender, because of the additional quality, experience and track record that West Construction bring to this contract. So it's really wanted the councillors to understand that's not the lowest tender is the recommendation, but this is 100% compliant with our procurement policy and manual and compliant with the procurement process that was publicly tendered. Happy to take questions.
Okay, we've got Mark.
Just briefly, can you tell us a little bit about West Construction? Who are they? They're a local company, are they?
Yeah, they are. I had a lot to do with Wayne West over many, many years. They were involved in a lot of the residential subdivision around Hamilton, so the original Fairview Downs block. They did a lot in over in Grandview, a lot in Flagstaff. Sadly, Wayne West passed away a few years ago, but his sons have continued the company.
Is that Mike West? No, that's...
And he's still got the same manager
No, I didn't think so, yeah.
as they had when Wayne was there?
Yeah, Max Varan, he's still there. But they have done a lot of strategic work for the city. So they're currently doing the big wastewater interceptor installation of Rotokauri. So that's a $5 or $6 million job.
Yep.
They consistently tender in that $5 to $10 million price range. And they are really efficient, really competent contractor. Yeah,
That's
it's
good
good to have that sort of calibre of contractor locally.
Yeah, you're right. Cool. Thank you.
Thanks. James.
Just one quick question. West Construction Limited, if their tender price was 3.519 million, how come the contract sum is 4.2 million? Sorry?
No, no, I can answer that question. So that speaks a little to the question Siggy had on the, Councillor Henry had on the previous report. So you never award a contract for the exact price because things change. There's always a contingency provision in the contract, and you would have seen that in the last Finance Committee. We've brought some savings back, and often that's the contingency sum as you get to know what the ground conditions are actually like. But because the approved contract sum becomes the council approved upper maximum limit, I personally treat it as the do not exceed limit. You need the ability to flex with unknowns, so poor ground conditions, whatever problems come at you through the delivery. But at the end of the job, if only a portion of the contingency has been spent or none of it's been spent, it comes straight back to council as savings.
Just through the chair, Andrew, it might just be worth noting that's all budgeted, including that contingency amount.
Oh, yes, sorry, absolutely, yeah, it's all budgeted.
Okay. If there's no more questions.
Just one quickly.
Sorry?
Sorry, just one quickly.
Oh, sorry, Ryan.
I appreciate you've got to have that contingency in there. Yes. Is it quite public to the contractor that, hey, we know we've got this, you guys have this up your sleeve?
Yes is a very simple answer because of this report and this forum. Although in practice very few contractors bother to research these reports through this forum. But often we might award the contract for the tendered price and then hold the contingency in reserve. But it's all, because this is a public process, it's all publicly discoverable.
I think, Ryan, the other aspect of that could be an answer to that I would immediately think of is that West Construction want to keep doing business with the city, and if our management thought in any way that they were trying to take it up to the 4.2 million, they wouldn't, that offset amount, what's it called, supplier quality premium, might be shown to drop in future contracts that tenders they put in.
That is exactly what would happen and has been known to happen in the past. But can I, just as a case and example, so West, I mentioned West are doing the wastewater pipe in Rotokauri. That's the project where it was $1 million? $1 million of savings went to Finance Committee off that contract from West, and the way that contract's been running in the previous Finance Committee. So I'm pretty happy with West and how they approach
Good
things.
save. Nice. Thank you.
Okay, I'll move it, seconded by, how about someone new? What about you three? Oh, Leo, thank you. I'm getting tired of you two. Leo. Seconded by Leo. Any discussion? No. Those in favour, against, carried. Thanks. So the last one for Andrew is 16, the private development agreement with Tasman Greg. That's on page 130.
This is a very interesting opportunity. So Perhaps if I refer councillors to the drawing on page 135. So we're looking, so the big blue square, not the little one, the big blue square is the park and ride land that has gone unconditional that council has recently purchased. This report relates to the purple and red hatched line that links Tasman Road through to Arthur Porter Drive, so it's sort of running diagonally across the page. That road has been shown in the approved structure plan for many years, and in fact since the structure plan was first approved, and it's a critical part of the transport infrastructure for the Rotokauri area. But of course, since council's decided to proceed with the park and ride in the location shown in blue, of course there's rail conversations happening as well. I think the need for that link is becoming more critical. Because of the fragmented ownership of the land, there's no ability for us to compel any one developer to provide that link at all, and it's becoming very apparent to me that it's going to be a 100% Hamilton City Council financial responsibility in the future, and the challenge will be working with prospective business owners, because their land will get sold and businesses will establish on it, and try and work with those people to try and deliver the link. Greg, who owns land to the south below the line, has offered a proposal, and the proposal is Greg would pay for the red hatched bit if council paid for the purple hatched bit, and entered into a commercial arrangement. So that's essentially the nature of this proposal, and Greg has signalled very strongly to us that that's his maximum offer. It's a take it or leave it position, but is waiting there for a council decision in relation to this report, and then we'd look to cement this in a contract. So really looking for a decision from council as to whether you want to proceed with an arrangement in that manner. I have to note that this is all unbudgeted in this financial year. But in the previous finance committee, I said there were more savings coming through from other contracts, and this cost can be completely offset against those other savings if council chooses to. Of course, the alternative is council just banks the savings. That's your decision. But the recommendation today is we introduce as an unbudgeted item, and that we enter into this agreement with Greg for a cost share to complete what's, I think, is an important link in the transport network. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, we've got Ryan first.
Yeah, I guess you've sort of partially answered, Andrew, but when you say savings from the, CE 15090,
yes,
staff recommendation, that this cost be offset by those savings,
yes,
that's only a partial contribution to the amount you're seeking. Is that right?
No, I'm proposing that the savings would completely offset this proposal. So this proposal is $2.335 million. What I'm proposing is that we would, through Finance Committee, we would declare the $2.335 million of savings. What I'm recommending is this council could utilise that savings to complete this transport link, and have an overall savings to the organisation, because the developer is going to come in and pay 35–36% of the total cost of the project. That's the value proposition, is the developer picking up over a third of the cost.
Okay, and what do you anticipate being the timeline on this offer, in terms of how long do you think it's going to sit on the table for?
Not very long. It's been difficult to convince the developer to wait even till today, but they are willing, and they've signalled that off the back of this resolution, they haven't been prepared to do any of the legal documents and things that we needed until after they see the resolution from council in relation to this matter. But they have said to us, if council wants to do this, they're in, and these are the terms: 36% costs to them. But if it was a no from council today, then I think they would walk away, and they'd be entitled to develop their land.
And could you quickly talk
Just be aware, this is only a recommendation to council. We can't legally make that decision here.
Correct.
It'll be council.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Could you just quickly talk me through point 33, just that breakdown of costs?
Yes, so that table relates to the line in the annual plan, so CE 15090, which is a capital project line, and it's called Roading Upgrades Development in Rotokauri. The approved annual plan was $3.281 million, but that was further supplemented by a deferral into this financial year of $1.453 million, giving a total budget in this year of $4.734 million. So now if I drop to the table, what I've got is the top line is this proposal, the Greg proposal, the TGDL Collector Road proposal, $2.335 million. Then we've got other contractual commitments with other developers that are underway, which takes us to the total funding available within this financial year. If council didn't proceed with an agreement with Greg, what I'm saying, $0.335 million would be reflected as savings through Finance Committee.
Thank you, Andrew. And sorry, Councillor Dave, you're just saying that it would still need to go to a further council.
Yeah, we have to, so the next council meeting, when the minutes go forward, this goes forward as well.
Right, okay.
As a recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, is that it, Ryan?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, Mark, thanks.
Thank you. Look, pretty basic question, really. Do we need it?
I believe so. You need it. I think you need it to best utilise the park and ride. I think
To have a road both on two sides rather than one?
it provides strategic access to effectively a spine road running north-south, being Arthur Porter Drive. I think Regional Council and Hamilton City needs it in terms of optimising the Orbiter Road. I think it'll be useful in terms of a future potential rail operation. And the reason it's useful for all those reasons is because it was planned as part of the development of the whole growth cell,
Right.
and it's shown in the structure plan.
So if we don't go ahead and he develops his land
Yes.
in that red chunk,
Yep.
would that be page 135? So we wouldn't be able to put a road.
So no, to be clear, the developer would develop their land in the red chunk and the purple chunk because it's all their land.
Oh, beg your pardon, yep.
Now, the district plan would prevent them from putting buildings on it, but they would be able to carve up the property. They'd be able to, there'd be, 10 to 13 titles created. There'll be industrial activities established.
Right.
There'll be car parking or storage, could happen on that site. And then council at some point, once it identified the critical need for the route, would have to make a decision around whether it wished to proceed or not. And then it would have to then enter into commercial negotiations with those 10 or so businesses and the cost of impact on their operations and, come to a financial arrangement and put the road through. The value proposition here is we can get in before any development and we can have someone pick up 36% of the cost, but it's an unbudgeted proposal.
Right, and that grey strip behind it is a road. Is the road ready to go?
No, that's a different developer again, and that grey strip is another road that a developer's proposing to integrate
Right.
the area.
So what's the relationship between that and the purple one? Like if we didn't go ahead with it, would he be still inclined to put a road in that area?
Hard to tell at this stage, but they're two separate developers and we've been trying to talk to them together. But this Greg is down in here and owns the strip that the road would sit on.
Yeah.
So that's the bit with the trees shown
That's
on it.
correct.
Yep.
Sorry, I don't have a version to put on the screen.
Right.
And then it's Chalmers is in here, and that's the one we've bought the park and ride land. And they're saying if we got this in, they'd put in the grey hatched area as well.
Okay. Because that's quite an expensive piece of land, isn't it? But then you've just told me before what it represents, potentially 10 sections on it. So.
Yeah, well, like I'd also point out too that along the northern edge of this new proposed road, Chalmers have already given council, so that's the northern developer, given council about a 3 metre wide street already, so
Right.
we own that.
Okay.
So we're already started down the track of protecting for this road.
Right, okay. All right, and Dave, you're saying that this doesn't commit us yet, it just brings it back to the council, is that right?
Well, it's a recommendation to council.
That's correct.
It certainly doesn't commit you.
Okay.
It can't legally, that's the reason.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
I might point out that also the Waikato Regional Passenger Transport Committee has approved the route on attachment 2, the next page over, I think, on your stuff, which goes through that road, subject to the road going ahead. It's approved that as the route of the orbiter and a hub to be organised with the council in there, but that's all subject to this road going ahead.
Okay, so I guess if I can just sort of indulge a little bit, where it becomes a little bit grey is just that a lot of ifs at this stage. I'm worried about the timing of it all. At risk of sounding like anyone else, we haven't even had it assured that the rail's going to happen yet. And
the value proposition, sorry if I may, the value proposition is not entirely rail. Okay, if it protects for the rail outcomes, whatever that might be, but already made commitments through its structure plan to say there will be a road, or signal very strong, you can see it on the plans, in the district plan, there will be a road here.
Yeah.
Plus, I think the orbiter benefits from it. And then council's purchased the big blue area for park and ride, which is an integral part of that whole as well, in terms of buses getting in and out of a park and ride facility.
Councillor Mallard asked the question of Andrew Wilson from the Regional Council this morning, so that, and I think something like, so this would be useful even if there's no train, and Andrew's answer was yes, it would be their bus hub at the back to take the pressure off what's inside the base, because there'll be a walkway over.
Okay, thank you. That's good. Thanks, Andrew.
So, sorry, we had a few others, Mayor Andrew, and then Angela.
See, Andrew, where the bus station is in pink, on page 135.
Yes.
You've got your pink, I presume that's where the train station is, proposed?
No, that was the original proposal, Andrew, but it's going to move south, we think, from that. Still a long line, but going southwards, so it's more opposite the park and ride.
See where the words Tasman Road's written?
Yes.
See the Tasman's got a wiggle in it, because the road's got a wiggle in it?
Yes.
It's quite tight through there. And if you continued that road straight instead of that wiggle, or take a little bit more land off these Chalmers guys when you get the chance, it just might future-proof that whole area to make the road work better, to make the rail work better, the railway station, two-lining of the rail better too. So I'm just throwing that out there if you, because you're the guy and who these opportunities come through.
I think that a lot of careful thought is needed once we have certainty around all of the transport opportunities. But one of the opportunities I think council would want to look at in the future is banning from that section of Tasman Road where the wiggle is, or something in that location, which all this proposal would allow, because then you could have people walking across between park and ride and rail, or it could be bus only through that section of Tasman. But there's some really good opportunities that come about simply by completing the road network in the local area.
So that immediately to the north of our blue bit of land,
yes,
if we could get a few metres across the front of that, if you ever get the chance, it could be helpful for future proofing. You know, it might be the next generation that needs it, but
Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Andrew, just go over again, I'm a little bit confused around, in the recommendation you're saying that funding is available for the land acquisition and the road construction in the current financial year, so I'm assuming that's because it's just a part of the project, but then you say it's unfunded.
That's correct, it is.
So can you explain those two things to me? How come we've got money in the current financial in A, and then in B in the recommendation you're saying it's unfunded?
I understand the questions, and perhaps it could have been worded better. It is unbudgeted, but there's funding available as a consequence of savings elsewhere in the capital program.
Right.
So
okay, sorry, no, okay, so funding is available. And, sorry, I missed, I think this was asked, what was that funding proposed? Where are you taking that from?
So the funding comes from...
It's not from risks and opportunities, pot, is it?
No, I think if council were to proceed, the transaction would be reflected on risks and opportunities, so it would be very transparent. But the funding's coming from the transport CE line for Rotokauri. So it still stays in the same area, but it's CE 15090 in the annual plan, or LTP.
And that was indicated to be spent on what project?
That was indicated to be spent on Tasman Road itself. It was also indicated to be spent on some property acquisitions, which have largely concluded, and the valuations have come in lower than expected. And it was also indicated for some private development agreements, which have now been entered into, and the evidence around those is, and the costs in those has come in lower as well. So this is genuine savings that goes back to council to spend or not spend as you please.
But you're recommending we spend it this way?
Yes, that's exactly right. Because this is the last opportunity we've got to partner with someone and have someone else help shoulder some of the cost.
Yeah. You're calling it and I have raised this before, that we are actually only a couple of months away from the LTP,
Yes.
and we are out for submission. So
Yes.
it really does concern me when reports come to us asking for work to continue, because I don't feel that that's terribly good faith with the community. But on page 130, deck summary down there in 6, it talks about the collector road, etc. And then you're saying it will give frontage to the land recently acquired by council for the proposed public transport hub. That's not the park and ride, eh?
Yes, that's what.
It is the park and ride.
Yeah,
Page 135, Angela.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The map, yeah.
the blue. So it's
it's-
the frontage to the south as opposed to the east, which is already there.
So that blue box.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. I did think, because I did look at the map and I highlighted a question mark. Why is that called the park and ride and you're calling it the transport hub?
it's poor choice of words.
It
But
just
it's the
gets
same
confusing,
thing,
because
yes.
in my mind we've been talking for years about a transport hub in terms of all the bus services and things like that, and that's different.
It's only recently, Angela, that once we bought that land and therefore identified it, that we've decided that the hub could actually be over the back of the west side of the line, as opposed to being in the middle of the base, which is getting
Yeah.
really tight, and the base is complaining. So that's caused us to shift the thinking to the land that we've just bought, which was initially thought of just for a rail park and ride. Then people said, well, wouldn't that be better to have all public transport
Yeah.
centred there?
Which makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. I am concerned that it does still feel like cart before the horse, in terms of if we got significant public submissions against rail, against park and ride, you know, that puts us in some risk.
I understand, but so I pride myself, and the team prides themselves on finding good opportunities
Yeah,
for council.
of course.
So this is a good opportunity, and we're proposing it and looking for a decision. So
So
the developer is unlikely to wait, though. That's all.
Yeah, the trouble I have with that, Andrew, is that's what happened last time. That's what we were told last time. And yeah, perhaps I'll save those comments for debate. I just have a concern around that. If we waited, we've got hearings just next month. I know deliberations are not till June, but we are an incredibly large organisation. We are the government of this land in this area, and we're talking about a developer here. I mean, our might surely is bigger than having a developer say, look, actually, I want you to write the cheque right now, rather than us allowing that public process and having some good faith with our community.
Yes, I understand
What's the
exactly. But having talked to the developer myself, I mean, I can't compel them to develop or not develop, but they've made it pretty clear they're ready to develop.
Angela, one of the aspects of that road giving frontage to the south of that is that if we were not to, say, have a park and ride base, as you said, mate, as a potential outcome, that allows that blue area to be subdivided in a different and much more efficient way for rail, which is one of the things that a number of councillors identified when we decided to do it, that it could potentially be on-sold and that you wouldn't lose money, and having the frontage through there enhances that. You don't have to sell it as one block at that point. It's much easier to subdivide and sell a higher value.
And I get that, and that lowers our risk. Look, this is a recommendation to council, so I'll support it, but I'm very uncomfortable with, and I just can't support any more of these decisions between now and. But yeah, I mean, I know that lowered our risk significantly. I mean, this land will be worth a bit of money, so it doesn't feel right though. I do have to go, so I might not even be here for the vote.
No, we've got Leo and then Ryan. Oh, Ryan's coming out for a second go.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether I've missed something here. When we purchased this land, it's a bit like a real estate agent coming up and saying, don't buy this house, there's another 4 people behind you, and they're going to buy it off you. And I just feel a little bit like there's a gun to our head to sort of go ahead with this. My understanding of it is when we purchased this land was to, if the rail went ahead, this would be used as a park and ride. And I thought it was a hell of an expensive, because I worked at about $14,000 per car park. If we don't go with this guy will just go ahead and develop it, I presume.
That's correct, yes.
He will.
That's what he said.
So why won't, that'll be good for us, though, won't it?
But he's going to develop as the red bit, as opposed to the purple bit.
And the purple bit, he will develop the purple bit as well. That's his part of his property.
But not as a road, I mean.
Not as a road, as businesses subdivided, and there'll be businesses on it. And he already has a subdivision consent that's come in guidance to do that. But he's not. I don't think he's not holding a gun to our head, in my opinion, because he's got an entitlement. He's come in good faith and said, well, like he doesn't have to pay 36%. He said he's prepared to do that to get the right outcome, but he's got a limit on how long he's just willing to wait.
But I thought we owned this purple bit.
No. The council has purchased the blue square, which is the park and ride side. The purple hatched area and the red hatched area, which comprises the road, is a line on the structure plan. And council only owns a very thin 3-metre strip that Chalmers vested in council a few years back. But to deliver the road is going to be a council responsibility if and when council chooses to deliver it. This is about an opportunity to partner with someone today.
I'm confused as to what we've purchased, actually.
When
we went on that bus trip, Dave, I understood that the place we'd purchased was beside Gilbert Place. We stopped, that's where we stopped.
No, we stopped directly where that black square is.
The black square?
Just next to the D in Tasman Road, on page 135.
Green.
Is it green? No, on this one it's definitely black, but never mind. But the place where you can look through between the buildings across the railway lines.
Yep. I'm still a bit confused on it.
Council does not own the land where you would be purchasing from Greg.
There. Looks about.
Sorry, what was that, Leo?
Currently, there's a great big mountain of earth in this area. It's all stacked up. I was through there this morning.
That's back off the map to the left, just above where the expressway goes through, just above that word
if you come down Chalmers Road, okay, you look to your left and there's a mountain of earth which is stacked up there. I thought that's where we were.
Well, councillors, what I can suggest is that we can have a bit of a familiarisation trip out there between this meeting and the council meeting where it comes up, if it goes through, to familiar, and maybe we can even stick a peg or two in the back corners of this so people can visualise it better. But we do need to keep moving on. So have you finished, Leo? Yep, thanks. Mark has question yet? You have, oh, okay, neither of you then, because look at the time, because otherwise we're going to run out of a quorum, so is it what, no, is it something you have to ask, or you could ask Andrew afterward?
I do believe it is. It's just regards the timing, how important is it that we do it before the 10-year plan for this guy? Have you got people waiting? So it's quite important.
It's completely council's decision.
Yeah.
No, I think to be fair, Mark asked you a question of your opinion, how important is it to do it?
If you want to proceed in a funding partnership arrangement, the opportunity is now with this committee and then the following council committee, because Greg has made it really clear to me that he's already waited, and I can only take his words at face value, but he feels he's already waited long enough to get to this point for a development that he could proceed with as of right anyway. So I don't think he would be waiting if council didn't consider the item at this time.
And Ryan, was your question essential? Thank you. Councillors, I think you've had as many answers as you're going to get from Andrew, which gives pretty full answers and honest answers too. So we have the staff recommendation, which is to vote on a recommendation to council. Okay, 3A and B, not the final deciding point. The meeting would be 19th of April. So that's in a week and a half, week and a bit. So that's when the final decision would be made if you pass this recommendation today. I'm going to move it. Do I have a second? Seconded by Jeff on this occasion. Sorry, I didn't look to my right, Siggy. I know, trouble. I'm going to move this. The reason I'm moving it is because I think it's an opportunity to close out the transport hub in the area. I mean, I hope there's going to be rail as well, but I know this is one of our major growth cells at the back of the base there, and the whole idea of the orbiter route and other bus routes going through there is going to really make public transport one of the major components of this whole area, and it's also going to be a major employment area across the back. There's going to be an overpass over the railway lines into the base. It'd be great connectivity considering there's a dirty great railway line running down the middle, and I think that the joint deal, if you like, with the developers here is an opportunity we shouldn't chuck away. I think councillors are unsure of exactly where these different bits are. We should have for them to have a look, but I think it's well worth us going ahead with this recommendation to council now. So that's me. Have we got other speakers? Sorry, I've got Mayor Andrew, then Jeff, then Mark.
Yeah, I just want to say this is exactly what we're here for, guys. Roads, this is the very basics. This was always planned to be here. Andrew, you've done a great deal for the city. Why would you wait for the 10-year plan? It's not in the 10-year plan. So we're not consulting on this in the first place. It's not a part of it. So there's no point waiting for the 10-year plan when this hasn't gone out for consultation. And sometimes flexible enough when the deals come through, as businesses do and as everyone else who makes life work in an agile way, is you take the deals when they come. When it's core business, and this is just, to me, just clear core business, and this was never the intention, but we happen to own a bit of land there that's going to end up with roads on 3 sides of it. And that's just, you know, if this was private land and this road was coming through, you'd be jumping for joy if this road was opening, and it just happens that we own this bit of land. And as I say, we didn't know this when we bought this. This has just come through and happened. But man, does this open this up to be a prime land for exactly what we're thinking of, a transport base at this end of the city, which we don't have at the moment, even if the rail doesn't happen. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Quickly, look, well done, Andrew, for digging up this opportunity in the first place. You know, I think it's one of these things that you need to act now, because if we try and do it later, it's going to cost a lot more money. So I support it.
Okay, we've got no more speakers. I'm going to put the recommendation. We'll do it on the board, thanks, just to make it clear, for or against, as per written. That's
Motion is-
carried 7 votes to 1. Thanks. Now, I need to move that we have a time extension. I'm going to propose till 5:15, so that's half an hour to finish the last 2 and the minutes of the confidential. Seconded by Ryan. Those in favour, against, carried. That's done. All right, so Helen, Helen's been waiting very patiently. And this is on page 66, councillors. Sorry? Yeah. You voted for it, don't you remember?
He seconded it.
Ryan and I got it through, yeah. Okay, Lance, are you doing this one?
No,
Helen.
He's supporting me.
Yeah.
So, good afternoon, Chair and councillors. So this item follows on from some recent briefings on the Rotatuna Town Centre, as well as the proposal in the draft 10-year plan to fund construction of a community hub, library, public square and some car parking, and to select a private partner to construct a swimming facility as part of the Rotatuna Town Centre development. Some councillors have expressed an interest in other potential options for the community facility development, including mixed facility options such as a combined pool library facility or library retail, as well as associated infrastructure and the layout of those facilities and infrastructure. Excuse me. So the intent of this report is to outline a process, including the appointment of an external consultant, to undertake a feasibility study or options report to determine the ideal community facilities and recommend a business model. As part of this, the process includes seeking expressions of interest for potential partnerships for either mixed or single-use facility options. So I've attached a high-level process outline to the report, and the focus of that is just to assure your level of public and elected member engagement. So once a consultant is appointed, we'll be able to provide more detail on elected member of involvement as we identify appropriate milestones and dates, and we'll build that into the into your briefing schedule. So there is budget allowed for in the draft plan for the options report and the expression of interest for potential partnerships. That will be a key part of that process if we're looking at mixed facilities. You'll need to understand what the cost implications of those might be. We need to understand if there are partners who can assist with that development, take on those developments. It is a relatively large and complex piece of work to be undertaken in year 1, and it needs to be initiated as early as possible so that contracting and construction can take place over years 2 to 4, which is the timing in the draft 10-year plan. So today we're just seeking to undertake an expression of interest for an independent consultant and to get your approval around the engagement process, but just so that the appointment can be made in July so that that work can be started subject to 10-year plan approval.
So no money
No.
will be expended until 1 July?
Until July.
Yeah.
We just want to go through the process, the tendering process for the consultant, so that we're ready to go on the 1st of July, and then we can move into that if that's approved through the 10-year plan process.
Thanks, Mayor Andrew. Andrew's moved. I'll seconded by Siggy. Just beat me to it. Okay.
Too much, but it's just regards. Look, I do the funny stuff. You do the mayor stuff. If it doesn't go through on the 10-year plan, what happens? Do we say to the consultant, there's nothing to do?
Yeah, process. So,
and we haven't spent any money.
Yeah, so it'll be a EOI process where it's very clear that it's non-binding.
Yep.
And we've done that previously on some things, so we'll be very clear and upfront with the prospective tenderers for all that. Look, we've actually got interest already from some consultants. Seen some of the the discussions that council's had on that. So
I'm not surprised. Yeah.
I don't think we'll be lacking in interest. And obviously, they might even put a submission in too. So.
Right, so you say, but what you're telling me is that there's going to be no money spent until it's been rubber stamped in the 10-year plan.
Correct.
Thank
So
you.
just another point, if it isn't adopted, we will need to come back to council to make some decision around what happens with that land, or if it's just unfunded in the 10-year plan.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, that's good.
Okay, so we've got that resolution as it's written here, moved by the Mayor, seconded by Councillor Siggy. No other question or discussion? You want to talk to it, Andrew? Okay, those in favour, raise their hands. Against? That's carried unanimously. Thanks very much. Sorry you had to wait so long for that, but it means your reports are quicker if you leave them to the end. Item 16, page 137. Councillors, just get there. And Keith, hi, welcome. Sorry you've had to wait so long. Do you want to walk us through this?
Certainly. Good afternoon, Chair. So this is the second future-proof indicator monitoring report that's been produced to meet the monitoring requirements under the National Policy Statement on urban development capacity. I just don't want to take up too much of your time, but just to note a couple of things. So this report does differ from the other growth metrics reports that are brought to this committee, particularly in that it has a particular purpose and focus, and it includes a prescribed set of indicators that we're required to monitor under the NPS UDC. The report for the September quarter is only before this committee now, as most of the data sources that we use in the report are only available 2 months after the end of the quarter. And then there have been a number of holidays, and then there's the meeting. Notwithstanding, we will be making efforts to improve the timeliness of this report. It had gone before the Future Proof Committee prior to this, so that perhaps needs to take place in parallel. So my intention is to report the quarter results to the May GNI committee next month. So just briefly on the indicators, this report now includes the more complex price efficiency results, which were produced by MB, the Ministry of Business, Employment, Innovation, and it has been a little challenging to draw some conclusive observations on these, but I've given it my best attempt. Just briefly on kind of the key results from the residential and business indicators. I mean, through the September quarter, there was a moderate slowdown in house price growth, but that continued nonetheless. And then one key point in the business indicators is that, and if I can make particular reference to the indicator 14 on page 151, the industrial vacancy rates. So looking at the table at the bottom left of the page, you'll note that from the year previously, there's been a significant decline in industrial vacancy rates within those identified precincts. There was recently local media coverage on a further decline in those rates. So just to clarify what this is that the vacancy rates within the commercially available and existing industrial precincts. So overall, our industrial land supply, we're aware that we do have sufficient supply for the 30 years. However, new industrial lots being brought to the market within Hamilton, so that is then reflected in the low vacancy rates. So the implications of this is that until such time as that new industrial precincts are opened up in Hamilton and new industrial lots are brought to the market by developers, it's likely that industrial activity will, in the short term, will locate outside of Hamilton. So that's just one key finding given the purpose of this particular monitoring and reporting is to assess the sufficiency of our capacity.
Keith, when the Ruakura inland port development comes on stream, that I presume would be a fifth precinct in that table you've just referred to?
That's correct, yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
so when are we talking about the first ones becoming available for sale and purchase?
I'm not aware of that timing. Yep.
Okay, so it might be handy to find that out, you know, given your report showing it's the vacancy rates halved in 1 year, last single year, and we're also into it halfway through a new year now. That might be quite important to know that we've got some land coming through there and we're not pushing them way outside the boundaries.
Yeah, so there's been increased growth in the two business estates immediately adjacent to the north, the Northern Gateway and then the airport. So, I mean, our vacancy rates and uptake compared with the others, you can definitely see that there's a declining vacancy within Hamilton and an increase in activity within the other two business estates.
Right. Do we have other questions? Or sorry, had you finished?
No. Yep. So just over to the committee if any further questions.
Any other questions? If not, thanks very much for this. It's actually important we keep getting these. As economic development is part of this committee's responsibility, and councils in a way to not to do it all but to see what's happening and be aware of that, and in fact that in our planning, and it'd be good if we can get them 3 or 4 months behind rather.
Certainly, I'll be working on improving that.
Yeah.
And if there are any questions beyond this committee that anyone has about the results, I'd be happy to take those. Yeah.
Great. Okay, thanks. I'll put the resolution, which is on, sorry, I'm just going back to the page here, that we received the report on page 137, seconded by Jeff. Those in favour? Oh, sorry, Andrew.
So I just
you had
want
a
to
question. Yep.
I hope members heard what Keith said. Okay, out of industrial land, there's huge blocks of industrial land that aren't being opened up in a hurry for us, and all our factories leaving on the other side of our boundaries. Right, we might have 30 years, and this is what happened 3 years ago with residential land in our city. We kept getting told by staff we had 30 years supply, but it wasn't opened up. We've got 30 years supply of industrial, but it's not opened up. People can't go out and buy a section today and build a factory, and so the jobs are going elsewhere. And this comes back to the whole thing I've been talking about of taking land off Waipa and Waikato to hugely increase their borders so we can plan our city properly for the next 100 years, not 30 years. Plan for the next 100 years, we can have more areas where people can open up when they need to. So just reminding members that these are talks that we're having with Central Wellington and with our neighbours to try and move things forward, because we're actually ending up where we're finding ourselves really on not being able to plan our city properly. And I think that, Keith, this report's a really good reminder of we need to be working probably closely with you on this team because this proves through supply and demand, which Keith is showing us that we might have 30 years supply, but it's not coming to the market. And so, yeah, we just need to plan our city for a long term, for the 100-year plan. So, yeah. I'm just reminding you of this because it will come up. This is coming back and I'm just taking you on the journey.
And Jeff had a good for expanding the city just before, didn't he?
No.
Okay, if there's any other comments, no, I'll put the resolution. Those favour, against, carried. Councillors, I'm going to move the resolution to exclude the public. Seconded by James. Those in favour, against, carried.